across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. It is Talk, and it is Petrie. And because it's summer holidays coming up at midnight, we've got a special hour for you. It's still Talk Back. It's still there for you to be able to ask questions. But we're going to be discussing longevity and biohacking and all of those good things. So we've done the outside beauty. Now we're going to do inside health. And joining me to discuss that and to help you out with any questions that you might have is Dr. Khan, who is, you've known, he's been on the programme before from the Harley Street Skin Clinic, and his real passion, he's absolutely passionate about this, is about inside health, how we can live longer by looking after not just the outside of us, but the inside of us as well. So if you've got any questions at all about that, because I'm fascinated by that biohacker millionaire who has took his own son's blood. He had blood transfusions with his own, all of these weird and wonderful things. How much of it is actually kosher and how much of it is actually just stupid? So we'll be discussing that with Dr. Khan at midnight, and I do want your questions. So if you've got any questions about longevity or any things that you've heard that you think sound a bit weird or wonderful, or you wonder if it, you know, like you say, oh, drink a bit of olive oil every day, and that I don't know if that actually does do any good. So if you've got any questions like that, then do give me a call, or you can put it in text form and I will ask Dr. Khan. So the number you're going to need is 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word TALK and your message to 87222. So that's coming up at midnight. We've got Phil Dave, Talk broadcaster and editor. He's going to be with us to go through the papers. We're going to be talking about the World Humanoid Robot Games. There's some great footage for you if you're watching on YouTube, or if you can watch on YouTube, try to watch it on YouTube, because there's some fabulous. It's a very funny a bit where this robot is distracted by robot cheerleaders, and I will show you that footage as well at about 1:45. So Chris Middleton will be joining us for that. Also, we're going to be talking to the chief political correspondent at the Times to see what Andy Burnham has got to do next. The honeymoon is practically over for Andy Burnham, so what has he got to do when he comes back to full-time politics, for the first time for him actually, next week? So all of that is to come. But the papers today were talking about Ofgem setting to raise the household energy price cap by 4% on October the 1st, taking the typical bills to a 3-year high due to, what they're saying is, the Iran war-driven wholesale gas costs. But those wholesale gas costs, not easy to say, affect every country in the world. So I'm not buying it as the only explanation as to why our bills are going up. Fixed tariff customers are shielded, but the 60% annual increase and broader energy costs remain a heavy burden, and we're expecting them to go up again in January. So this isn't it. This isn't the only price rise that we are going to see. And when you learn that Britain's push to net zero has failed so far to deliver cheaper power, UK manufacturers paid 238 megawatts per hour for electricity last year, nearly double Germany's £138, and roughly 4 times the US's £65. Matching American energy rates would have saved British industry £11.4 billion. That's 69% on its £16.6 billion 2024 energy bill. So why are we paying more than just about anybody else on the planet when all the same rules, all the same levers apply to every other country, really. Well, Michael Grubb joins me now, Professor of International Energy and Climate Change Policy at University College London and author of Planetary Economics. Good to meet you, Michael. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you for having me on, Petrie.
Look, the Iran war, I know, is an issue, but it's an issue globally, right, for people's bills. But we seem to be being told that that's what it is, and just pay your energy bills. But we are paying considerably more, it seems, than other countries. Yeah. Why?
In a nutshell, we are paying considerably more. It varies between households and industry. So you already mentioned Germany, which gives bigger discounts for its industry, but German households pay as much or more to cover the overall costs. But yeah, British electricity and energy prices are amongst the highest in the world, and that's a huge problem for people and for industry. Why it is? It's partly because the UK is unusually dependent on natural gas. So we have obviously most homes in Britain depend on natural gas for heating, and electricity is basically a mix of low carbon and gas, but gas sets the price most of the time for the way that market works. A lot of other countries have a bigger mix. Some, I mean, in the continent, you've got countries with more hydro. France has its old nuclear fleet. There's a wider mix of sources in many countries. So the domination of gas at a time where we've been hit by the gas crisis of 22 and now the whole Straits of Hormuz is the biggest single reason. But also Britain has been ambitious in its net zero transition. It's had amongst the world's leading and most rapid development of renewables based on contracts, some of which historically were really quite expensive, and we're still paying for those contracts, and we're still paying for some of the network build out. So anyone who wants to point their finger at one single thing doesn't understand the combination here. Another
thing I don't understand, and bear with me on this, is why is electricity, why are electricity prices set by gas? Because when we're producing renewable energy, which is this wonderful, you know, supposedly not free, we know, but this great thing, it doesn't make any difference to our prices because it's attached to something that isn't free. So why is electricity and gas, why are they connected? That makes literally no sense.
It's one of these oddities which is an outrage to most people. Economists say, but it's common sense. You want the lights on, you've got to pay for the plant that is going to be the most expensive. Why? Sorry, you have a bid and you say, we need enough power to make sure the lights stay on. All of the renewable energy gets scheduled in, but they also know that the market usually will clear at the cost of bringing on some gas. We need some gas to keep the lights on most of the time. That's what set the price in the wholesale market. That's what gets fed through the system for the most part. Some of the more recent renewable energy contracts actually then do a matching, and they will pay some of the money, surplus money, back to consumers compared with their original contract price. But for the vast majority of time, gas is still setting the price of both the wholesale and feeding through to retail. And that is, it's the way we designed the market. We designed it for a time when renewable energy was really small and needed more support. And we're still stuck with the same market design.
But which seems ridiculous. So it's almost practically a lie then to suggest that renewables, if they are still linked to gas, will bring the price of fuel down.
So, I mean, the more recent contracts, what government call contracts for difference, and that difference is the difference between what they've agreed to the investors need versus what they actually get in the wholesale market. So at times those contracts, some of those will be paying the excess money back to consumers. That will take a few months rolling in later. But yeah, fundamentally, the early renewables don't do that. So they're making more money now out of the market because gas prices are higher. And that will only really start to change when we have enough renewables, enough of the time that gas is no longer setting the price because it's the last thing required on the system. And we ain't there yet.
No, we're not.
We
And we are spending an enormous amount of our bills on infrastructure, right? That's been passed on to us completely to pay for these things. But we know that wind farms are asked to switch themselves off at enormous cost, because we have to pay for the electricity that they would have been paid for and for the replacement fuel that replaces the electricity that we would have got from them. So that's a double whammy to us again, for failure in infrastructure building that we're paying for, to build enough pipelines and to build enough batteries and storage for an enormous amount of energy being created that can't be used immediately. It just seems like we're being just treated as suckers, really.
Well, you might say some people have been somewhat asleep at the wheel of just how, to be fair, just how fast some of the renewable energy would come on stream. Some of the costs came down substantially, but a lot of it was built in areas where they basically didn't reward stuff being placed in the right place. They said, oh, well, we'll build it where it's cheapest to build, and then we'll build out the networks. And that has not been fast enough. Those constraint payments you talked about, they're close to £1 billion a year. That's a lot, and they're heading north as well. So I mean, in total, that's still a very small part of your total bill, but it's wasted money. It is paying generators who were promised a fixed price contract, and then we turn around and say, oh, we can't use your power, but we're going to have to pay you anyway because that's what the contract says.
Yeah.
So the government's dilemma is they've inherited basically policies from the whole of the last 20 to 25 years, many of which have been locked in contracts, and the government would be liable if it broke those contracts. But those things, combined with the networks required to actually make use of some of those investments, that's what's driving up our bills. At present, high gas prices, they're still the dominant impact. And it is important because
sorry, we're just saying that we'll come back to the Strait of Hormuz, because I always find with these things anyway, prices love to go up like a rocket, but they come down like a feather. So even when the Strait of Hormuz, let's imagine a day where that's open, that it's not going to bring the prices down to what they were before. We know that, right? That isn't going to happen.
Right?
Indeed. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. But when we look at the future of our power, if you like, in this country, what we're going to do about electricity, what we're going to do about renewables, what we're going to do about all of these things, why are we paying, but the gas company or the electric company are the ones that make the profit? So can they not put the money into rebuilding this infrastructure? Well,
let me actually step back and say one other thing first, which is in terms of the Ofgem price cap going up for consumers in October, it is still, it's household gas use is the biggest component. That is the one that is actually increasing. The electricity price is going to stay about flat in that. But I think the other thing, and if you like, the gamble or the bet here is, of course, the clean energy does reduce the gas imports. The market, in the way we touched on, is not helping because you don't see that in the short term. But obviously, if we were having to import a lot more gas, that would probably still be driving up household bills and driving up the price of gas even further. So I find myself increasingly saying it. The real problem in Britain is we're paying for two electricity systems at the same time.
Yeah.
We're paying for the old system and the early payments to get renewables going, which is some of those contracts are still running and are expensive. And we're paying for all the infrastructure required for the new system. And we're right in the middle of paying for both in the middle of the gas crisis. So, you know, that's a kind of way of simplifying it. Your question, companies making so much money, I mean, that is the reality of the competitive private system that was created 35 years ago. Companies will maximize their profits and say that's what their shareholders expect of them.
So we have to pay. We have to pay for their infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, companies will try and maximize the profits given the rules. If governments change the rules on which companies did investment, they'll cry foul and may be able to sue the government. So in that sense, I have sympathy in that Andy Burnham has inherited 25 years of government policies of all shades that have led us to this position. And it is not an easy problem for him to fix. There are things can be done. The government has out for a policy intended to break the link with gas for the old renewables. But even that's going to take many months to get through the system. So in my view, prices will be coming down over the next few years, but not far and not fast. No. And that's going to leave a lot of people very unhappy.
When we look at the Energy Secretary now considering opening up, I think it's Jackdaw, isn't it, with gas? Yeah. So to ease the issues, that's what we're told. But my understanding is that that would be sold on the open energy market. What difference would it make to us if we were getting gas out of Scotland?
So it's worth saying there's two big fields in play right at the moment, i.e. fields that have been broadly developed, could be brought on stream moderately quickly. They're Jackdaw and Rosebank. Loads of people say North Sea oil, good or bad, and it's a big ideological. I think one thing is they're very different. Jackdaw, it's a gas field that would connect directly into the British gas system. Now, those developers would still be broadly seeking the gas price, but at least it's connected directly into the UK system, and it could help, depending how it's arranged, moderate price, or at least enhance our security. Would be less dependent upon the imports of LNG coming, well, no longer much out of the Strait of Hormuz, mostly from the US. So it would have some protection. Personally, I think there's a strong case for that. It's not going to be, I mean, this is all about slowing the decline of the North Sea. None of this is going to be big gold rush in the North Sea. It's a depleting field, but this would be this would slow the decline a bit. Rosebank's a different matter. Rosebank is a big oil field way off the north of Scotland. It would export directly to refineries on the continent. It'd do absolutely nothing for prices. It would be a bigger investment, more emissions, and I think the case is a lot weaker personally than for Jackdaw. But in the political debate, these all get lumped together, North Sea, yes or no.
Yes,
I think the real energy is more complex.
Yeah, my understanding as well from Rosebank, the oil there that's left there is quite dirty. And then it needs to be refined, as you were saying, and it needs to be cleaned up quite a lot. So it's not oil, all oil is equal, right?
Indeed, and not all fossil fuels are equal, just like not all renewables are equal as well.
Yeah, exactly. Where do you see us going with renewables? In your view, all we want is the lights to stay on and to not be paying the most in the world for our electricity or even our gas, right? And it's all very well. I was reading some stuff, people saying, well, you know, this will encourage people to go to heat pumps. Yeah, well, tell that to somebody in a 16-storey block of flats, right? I mean, that is not the answer. What is the answer to getting this expedited? What needs to happen so that we're not still having this conversation in 10 years' time?
Yeah. So there's not a single thing that needs to happen. I actually think one of the worst things to do would be to sort of panic and stop the transition halfway and still pay for both systems at the same time. I think that the key thing is, though, renewables have really entered a whole new phase. When we kicked off renewables 20 years ago, they were relatively novel, relatively expensive, not a large part of the system. System could easily absorb them, and the variability didn't matter much. We've now moved into a very different world. Costs of solar have plummeted, costs of wind are, come substantially down. They are a sizable part of the system. Renewables, even the variable renewables, are now about 35% of generation. They're beginning to have periods when they hit the margin of the electricity system, and then you see some of those prices crashing temporarily. But that means we start getting these periods of surplus where the system can't use it all, either because the grids, or soon we may have some periods when overall we have, you put nuclear renewables together, we could have surplus. So that's a kind of waste. I mean, geeks will tell you, yeah, it might still be economic to have some and you use 80–90% of the power. What we really need now is a lot more storage.
Yeah.
More storage at all levels of the system is going to help. Finally, I think more local energy has got to be more of a part of it. We've inherited a very centralized, top-down, big picture heavy system, big wind farms in the North Sea. We've really not had enough development of local energy, local solar, and the fact that cost of batteries are so much cheaper now really makes it, it's not going to deliver all your energy, but it would really start to help.
And with pricing, like I said rather cynically, when prices go up, they very rarely come back down to where they were because profit is built into the model that we have, because these are companies who want to give money to shareholders. We've seen that with the water companies. So are we really ever going to see a fair price for fuel in this country whilst private companies are running these networks?
So, I grew up in the days when we had a central electricity generating board. It was one big monolith that felt the only thing to do was build lots of coal and nuclear power stations, and it didn't do it very efficiently, and it built more than we needed, so we also paid. Yeah, central planning is not the answer for every problem. That said, we rushed into privatising the whole energy system without nearly enough thought and attention to what is an electricity system.
Yeah.
It is not a standard market. It's a bizarre hybrid of stuff that you have to sell millisecond to millisecond with assets that last 40 or 50 years and which have to go through networks which have to be regulated. So that's a long answer to say it's going to be complicated. It is not obvious from sheer evidence that privatization has made anyone's energy much cheaper, but it's very expensive to reverse because Burnham simply could not afford to renationalize the industry. It's just fiscally impossible. You hear talk about more government control, but you tell that to the private shareholders. Well, we want you to be private shareholders, but government's going to control how you run. It ain't that easy. So the obvious stick for the government, I think there are areas they could do a lot to simplify the market. They have also got the energy generation levy, which is, AKA windfall tax. If, profits continue at current levels and people get more angry, I think that may be something the government looks at, and maybe they should.
Yeah, I mean, some of the profits that these particularly oil companies are making are eye-watering, aren't they?
It is.
Extraordinary. And they're not doing anything for it either. It's just circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, but the fossil fuel world for the last 50 years and more has been dominated by 3, now 4 major price shocks. All of them have basically made oil companies incredibly rich.
Yeah.
I mean, numbers you wouldn't believe. Our own calculations was the oil industry in 2022, global oil industry made £500 billion of surplus, above expectations. Overall profits more than $1 trillion, of which about half of which was an unexpected dividend because of war. War makes oil rich, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. I don't want to even start connecting the dots backwards from that either. It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. Michael Grubb there, Professor of International Energy and Climate Change Policy at University College London and author of Planetary Economics. Brilliant. Quick break, back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it is Talk and it is Petrie here with you. I've got a message from Mark here. So as we're talking about the energy price cap, could we find out if Burnham's VAT reduction gets passed on to those tied into a fixed tariff? I would say yes, it does, because that's about VAT. If you pay VAT on your bills, then it's a VAT reduction. So you should see a reduction in the VAT even on your fixed tariff. Last time the government gave a reduction for a couple of months, my supplier completely ignored it and I didn't see a penny of it. That's because you were on a fixed tariff. But the VAT is separate from that. So you should see a reduction of, you know, what, about 2 pence, I don't know what it is, which will really help you in the future. But you should see it because it's VAT. So there you go. And so thank you for being the most relaxing voice on the radio. You're very welcome. Thank you. Right, coming up at midnight, if you're interested in living longer, what are you prepared to do about it? Are you prepared to become a biohacker? Are you prepared to take these, is it peptides that everybody's talking about at the moment for various different things? People on social media are always injecting themselves with things that are not meant to be injected with, injected into the human body. But what are you doing to try and live longer? Do you have any particular sort of biohacks yourself? Because joining me in the studio is Dr. Khan, who is an expert in this field, and he is obsessed with the idea that we can live longer by looking after ourselves, and he has different ages, things we should be looking at doing in order to live well for longer. He's also an esthetician, so he's used to looking on the outside of people, but he's also fascinated about what it is that we can do on the inside to be younger as well and to live better for longer. So if you've got any questions at all about that, maybe you've got a few hacks yourself, or you've seen something you'd like to know if it's true or not, like drinking olive oil every day. That's what I see quite regularly. I don't know why. I can't imagine. No, I don't think I'd like to do that. But does it work? What does it do? So all of those questions, if you have any, then do get in touch. The number you need is 0344 499 1000, and you can text your question if you'd like to 87222. Put the word talk up front and it comes through to me here in the studio. Quick break, back in just a moment to discuss Andy Burnham going back to school next week.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good evening. It is Talk and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. Just a reminder, coming up we're going to be, I really urge you, if you've got YouTube, to try and to watch us to watch the next bit coming up, because there's some great footage I've got to show you about the robot games that have been happening. It's the last day today in China, I think it is. But anyway, it's to show all what these amazing robots can do, and they look quite funny, but I suppose it isn't really that amusing. And also coming up at the top of the hour, Phil Dave will be here to go through the papers for Thursday. So all of that is yet to come. But Prime Minister Andy Burnham, he's only been in 5 weeks. Mind you, that's quite a long time for a British Prime Minister. I mean, let's be honest. 5 weeks, and initially enjoyed a popularity surge, but the honeymoon may soon be over. He's back to school next week. New pencil case, new compasses, all of that shoved in. My favourite pencil case, by the way, we had a furry one with googly eyes. That was the one that I was most excited to go back to school with. So, Andy, get one of those. It's really good. So far, we've heard he's set to prioritise regional devolution, a huge council tax drive, a council housing drive, and targeting the cost of living relief as he removed VAT on domestic energy bills and cut business rates for pubs, music venues and community social hubs. But we've not really heard much detail of how he's going to pay for much of this. And I tell you, the honeymoon will be crashing out come the budget at the end of October. To discuss what might be on his to-do list, on his schedule for the beginning of next week, Aubrey Allegretti joins me now, Chief Political Correspondent at The Times. Good to meet you, Aubrey.
Good evening, thanks for having me.
Good evening. Which was your favourite pencil case?
Good question. I think I was the sort of person that just used to kind of shove all my pens and pencils in like my sort of blazer pocket, and then they would kind of leak ink everywhere. I wasn't the very organised pencil case carrying type.
Yeah, you're just like my brother. Absolutely, exactly the same. So Andy Burnham, I would say the honeymoon is probably over now. It's been a very short one because he has been working much of the last 5 weeks. But it's getting serious now for him, isn't it? This is when you know, he has to hit the road.
It is. I mean, Parliament is in many ways like a school. I mean, a particularly sort of odd Hogwarts-style school, some would say, based on the architecture. But the political year does sort of feel like it begins and ends in September, not least when you have a Prime Minister that hasn't really been sort of tested or challenged in the Commons in any way. And due to the nature of the handover, he obviously became Prime Minister just after recess, meaning that he hasn't actually sort of addressed Parliament from the dispatch box yet. He's given one speech from the backbenches. He's kind of made those quite sort of small decisions designed to give voters, as we were talking about earlier, breathing room in your introductory remarks. And those are things like the cut in VAT on energy bills and reintroducing the £2 bus cap fare. But he's also decided, I think, he's going to signal that a lot of big decisions are going to be shunted back way past the budget, and they involve some of the big decisions he's going to have to make about defence spending, how it rises to 3 and 3.5%. We're not expecting that at the end of October when John Healey delivers his first budget, nor are we expecting the big announcement about his reforms to social care, which again are basically contingent on a big report from Baroness Louise Casey coming back next year. And you also mentioned the social housing sort of mass building drive. That is, again, unlikely to take form until next year. The kind of much more kind of big meaty issues, I mean, the first thing I think that Parliament's going to be dominated by on day one next Tuesday after the bank holiday is the early release scheme. That's effectively the deadline that Andy Burnham set for his own Justice Secretary. Slightly unkindly, some, I think, government officials would say, to sort of force your Justice Secretary into doing something that seemingly appeared impossible before. And that's about how they tackle the early release scheme. There are going to be 5,000 prisoners released 40% of the way through their sentence under Labour's plans to try and tackle prison overcrowding. A problem, obviously, that they inherited from the previous government, but we're now 2 years into Labour being in power. And so there'll be lots of questions about how they prevent the release of PC Andrew Harper's killers, probably at the forefront of MPs' minds. We've been reporting for the last few weeks that ministers' main plan is to try and restrict people leaving jail early if they committed an unlawful act in the course of manslaughter, which the killers of PC Andrew Harper did because they had stolen a vehicle which was later used to drag him away. So the sort of repercussions and the fallout from that will probably stretch. The kind of tail of that will be felt for a few months. The other big decisions you've got ahead are Shabana Mahmood's big migration reforms. She wants to make it harder for 1.6 million legal migrants who are already living in the UK to be able to gain permanent residence here. And there has been the potential for a big mutiny from Labour MPs who were unhappy about her basically doubling the period that people would need to live here for to qualify from 5 to 10 years. So we'll have to see how much that softens. And then the third big issue is probably to do with kind of energy bills. Miata Fimbula, the energy secretary, was suggesting today that there would need to be some sort of short-term immediate support to combat the rise that we've seen today from Ofgem, and the predictions about a further rise in the winter, of early next year. And so the Prime Minister is expected to approve one of the two big oil and gas drilling fields in the North Sea, Rosebank, and you'll forgive me, I can't remember the next one. Jackdaw. There we go.
Yeah, Jackdaw's the gas.
Yes,
yeah.
So he's probably going to approve one of those, and those are probably the three big things that we'll expect to hear much more details about in the first week of him being in power. Going back to Parliament.
Yeah, it is interesting for me about Andy Burnham is that although we know he spent time in government before, right? But he's not been tested as Prime Minister, and he's had such an easy run of it for 5 weeks. You know, he could just stand there and announce these wonderful policies, these gifts that he's giving to the country without any pushback, without any questions. No, there's been no press intervention, no, heckling from the back from various newspapers, nothing. So he's had a really gentle introduction to being a Prime Minister. He also had a very easy ride of it being mayor, because mayors are the good guys, right? If they can't do something, they just blame Westminster. It's not their fault. It's never their fault. And they give money away. He's going to have a rude awakening, isn't he? Because I think there's a lot of pent-up... I'm fuming that we haven't got more details from Andy Burnham. I'm sick, I'm bored of hearing these promises with no backbone to it, with no substance to it. So there'll be a lot of pent-up questioning from guys like you for Andy Burnham. He's not going to get off easy, is he?
Well, the first thing we think he's basically going to do on Parliament's first day back is face 2 hours of questions in the Commons. Normally it would be an hour, so I suppose you could say 2 hours is much more than usual, but it is in lieu of at least 4 weeks of having kind of waited to be able to kind of grill him properly. I mean, the polling bears out that his honeymoon period is sort of still lasting. He remains the most popular politician in Britain, albeit I think his positivity rating is about plus 47%. So that does put him ahead of Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage. And indeed, the national opinion polls have narrowed. Previously, there was about a 10-point gap, really, which Reform was out in front. Now, Labour and Reform are kind of jockeying for first place, but actually, basically all the political parties are in the sort of low 20s, which I would suggest means that there isn't a huge kind of groundswell of support for any particular one of them, and actually that there's a lot of kind of voters who are basically giving Andy Burnham a chance and have maybe drifted back to the Labour Party but aren't yet convinced enough to sort of fully throw their support behind him in huge numbers. And there is the potential for that to fall apart. And there is the audience of Labour MPs who Andy Burnham is effectively sort of beholden to. And they, I think, have been a little bit frustrated and uncomfortable over the last few weeks at some of the positions he's taken. They see the noises that are coming out about the budget as kind of flying in the face of what they thought he would do. Andy Burnham's team seem to be trying to learn lessons from Keir Starmer's and avoiding a budget that significantly raises taxes, even though that's what a lot of economists say will be necessary. The fiscal headroom's been reduced from about 22 billion to 15 billion because of the war in Iran, pushing up costs more broadly across the board. And so the amount of money that he is going to have to find to pay for some of that headroom, and indeed Keir Starmer's roughly £5 billion defence spending pledge in the sort of final weeks of office will put a lot of pressure on him. But there are still big unanswered questions. Even on the world stage, he's obviously taken a trip to Kyiv very recently, but it's likely that he's going to go to New York for the UN General Assembly at the end of September. There are big international issues and potential rows with the White House and Donald Trump, including over whether or not, for example, Britain is going to impose trade sanctions on Israeli settlements and other issues where there has been quite a lot of conflict between the UK and US position.
The question that I have for you as well is there a concern that Andy Burnham will try to do the popular thing? He likes being popular. We all like being popular, right? Rather than the necessary thing, because he's learned that the backbenchers are powerful. They saw off his predecessor rather robustly, and they stood up to him, and they've got renewed power, right? They know what they can do now. And there's certainly, if he's seen to be trying to do the popular thing and not the necessary thing, I don't see the public sticking with him for very long, because there's a lot of things that need to happen with the welfare budget, for example, that the country is expecting him to see, with immigration that they're expecting for him to get a grip on. He can't keep kicking that can down the road, can he?
Yeah, I mean, I think he sort of understands the perception and the tension. So he's been giving interviews in the last couple of weeks where he's been effectively saying, look, I can't promise people the earth, and nor would they sort of want me to, and nor should they expect me to, which I think does lower expectations somewhat. He's also, of course, got some of these big challenges ahead. You talked about the welfare bill being one of them, which, again, quite sort of long-term issues that the government's looking to address. The report by the former Labour Minister Alan Milburn is expected out later this year, and then there's a separate report that the first one is on effectively NEETs, the young people who are not in education or training or employment, and then there's another report being run by Sir Stephen Timms, another Labour MP, that's more into how to reduce the size of the welfare bill, and sort of in doing so encourage more people back into work. It isn't clear. He hasn't sort of signalled a strong direction of travel in terms of how he's going to approach either of those things, beyond saying that he will kind of listen to their recommendations. Burnham was, I think, speaking today about how he did think that the cost of the welfare bill should come down overall, but until you start naming specifics about who's going to lose what and how much and what incentives you're going to put in place for people to effectively kind of try and use a sort of carrot instead of a stick, those big questions remain unanswered, and he will face a lot of those questions over the next few weeks.
How do you imagine he's going to respond during PMQs? How I can't quite work out what he's going to be like.
I mean, personally, I'm quite excited in that I think it will be a much more sort of, I want to say entertaining, but I don't want to make it sound like it should just be for entertainment.
Yeah.
I think it will be a genuinely more rigorous kind of exchange, because Keir Starmer, one of his many faults was that he was quite wooden when he was answering questions, and you saw it with the media, but you also saw it a lot in PMQs. He struggled to be sort of quite sort of sharp-heeled and be sort of forthcoming in terms of his criticisms and his attacks and his ability to answer questions.
I mean, I've never understood that. He was a barrister. He must have been the dullest barrister in the world to watch.
Yeah, he was always one of those people that you got the impression absolutely loved kind of reading papers, but sort of didn't really enjoy getting into the, well, I mean, let's call it what it is, politics of the situation. And so I can kind of imagine Andy Burnham almost sort of thriving in that environment, and at least sort of attempting to engage in the questions and kind of come up with good political ripostes to them, like we're used to seeing almost decades ago, rather than somebody who was effectively trying to deadbat every question they got and not really win arguments, but more sort of survive the session. Yeah. And of course, he'll be going up against Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, who we actually have seen quite a sort of spectrum of light and shade from her. Yeah. Initially, you know, she got quite a lot of flack for her sort of performances at PMQs. Again, not being particularly sort of her ability to think on her feet, but actually she has won quite a lot of plaudits in the last few months for being a lot better at kind of making incisive remarks and picking up on detail and then pivoting her questions to tailor them to the answers she's just received. And then, of course, at the end of Keir Starmer's premiership in his last PMQs, we saw a much kind of more softer side of her that was kind of able to cajole and very gently mock in its own kind of withering way, but which came across as more emollient and sort of probably befitting to the occasion. And so she seems like she's got that sort of full spread spectrum of tactics to handle Burnham as well. It's probably the most excited I've been to see two leaders going up against each other in quite a few years.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be interesting, and I wonder how she's going to play the very first one, because that will set the tone. So I think she'll come out with boxing gloves on. That's what I think. Aubrey, it's been a real pleasure to chat to you. Thank you. Let's do it again. Aubrey Allegretti there, Chief Political Correspondent at The Times. Quick break, back in a mo.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie. Just a reminder that coming up at the top of the hour, we have Phil Dave. He's going to be here to go through the papers for Thursday. So that's coming up. But first, we need to talk about this, because I'm just slightly obsessed. As you know, I get slightly obsessed about things like this and technology. Beijing has been hosting the second edition of the World Humanoid Robot Games this week, with over 2,000 droids from 16 countries, following an opening ceremony with hundreds of synchronized marching bots. Headline highlights include the Tiangong Ultra sprinting 100 metres in 9.39 seconds, shattering Usain Bolt's 9.58 second world record, and a robot clearing 2.88 metres high jump. It's slightly intimidating, isn't it, really, that they can do this? From a bot executing Cristiano Ronaldo's CU goal celebration to droids competing in boxing, Tai Chi and table tennis, the games highlight rapid robotics progress. But is this a bit of just fun and games? I mean, it is certainly extraordinary to look at. Well, joining me now is Chris Middleton, author and technology journalist who specialises in robotics and AI, and his new book, The Robot Century, will be out in mid-October. Great to meet you, Chris. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
It's my pleasure, thank you.
Is this just a bit of fun? It certainly looks funny to me, although quite scary as well.
Well, it is a bit of fun. Really, it's a showcase of engineering excellence, I would say. This whole idea of robots playing sport, running, jumping, doing somersaults and so on, has been around for 20 or 30 years, but it used to be, small humanoid robots playing football, falling over, and it was sort of comedy. But nowadays, the engineering advances in these machines have been extraordinary, and I think the games have certainly showcased that.
I mean, what I've noticed has come a really long way is even the basic thing of walking. That was a real problem for a long time, wasn't it? They used to have very heavy counterweights on robots to give them an upright position, but they seem to have been able to very rapidly engineer that into a more humanoid-looking creature.
It used to be the case that the best way to stop robots from taking over the world was just to put down shag pile carpet, and you would have been fine. But yeah, you're quite right. Yes, absolutely. And robots can climb stairs,
Yeah.
turn somersaults, jump, and as you were saying just now, sprint faster than a human, jump higher than a human. It's extraordinary in engineering terms.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so we're sort of getting there with the physicality of robots, right? But what they're doing is, I'm going to say basic and repetitive. There's nothing basic about, you know, copying the human body and running at speed. I don't know. There's a lot of engineering in that, but it's not thinking power, is it?
No, not at all. And that's a really important point. A robot could probably explain Einstein's theory of gravity to you today, because that's just text. You know, that's data that you can just scrape off the internet.
Yeah.
A large language model can do that. Any chatbot can do that. Whether it will give you the correct information is a separate matter. But a robot could do that too, because you could take that AI and stick it in a robot. But the problem is that the data that robots need to do things that are useful in the human world, you know, to actually to have a kind of general purpose intelligent robot that understands what people want and can do any task, that data isn't anywhere on the internet. It doesn't exist. You can't just scrape it like you can a book or a research paper. So the only way to train robots to do anything useful is to train them in the real physical 3D world and teach them about how the world works. So it's often said that, you know, a robot could explain Einstein's theory of gravity, but it can't sort your dirty socks. But for the simple reason that the data to sort your dirty socks doesn't exist on the internet. You've got to train the robot to do that.
It's really fascinating, isn't it? The things we take for granted as human beings, like things like that would be so incredibly complicated to teach a machine. I don't know if you've seen this clip, or if you've got even the possibility to watch it now with me, but have you seen the robot that got distracted? Apparently by cheerleaders? It's very funny. We'll show it now. Okay. So we're just going to play that right now. Here we go. So there's they're robot cheerleaders. There's the robot in the front watching them. Oh, there he goes.
Excellent. Yeah. Well,
what happened there? Because that looks very human, right? There's a bunch of hot robot chicks there doing doing cheerleading stuff, and that apparently boy robot is distractedly watching them and falls over. What is actually in technological terms?
Well, I think you're making a lot of assumptions about the robot there. But,
I know I'm humanising. I know that. No,
well, that's what we do, though. We do humanise machines that look like us and AIs that think that use the same language that we do.
Yeah,
it's
of course.
Issue. Essentially, the robot in that case was simply distracted by things that hadn't been programmed to notice or to see. I was in China, funnily enough, last year, and a robot was being teleoperated by some people, and then they let it run autonomously. And it was so confused by the thousands of people milling around it that it just sort of stumbled around waving its arms in the air because it couldn't process any of the information.
Oh, wow.
It didn't know where it was, because all it sees, you need to remember that a robot doesn't know what people are. It just gets a vast amount of information coming into its sensors, but it doesn't know what any of it means because it doesn't know what the world is. It doesn't know what human beings are. It doesn't know anything about the world we live in. It's just a machine that it can be programmed to do things at the moment, So,
is it a mistake for us to humanise these machines, to make them look more human? I mean, I know that the theory is that we'll be more accepting of them in the workplace and maybe as care assistants and things like that. But is it a mistake? Because we do imply an emotional knowledge and maybe a moral compass that we know that human beings are capable of. Are we sort of pushing that onto these things that don't and can't have that? There's
been a lot of research about this area recently, and there was a research study done earlier this year which found that people are still genuinely very uncomfortable with robots, particularly the more they look like human beings, less people accept them. But people seem to like robots to look like machines rather than like fake people, if you like, and that's understandable for that reason, because there's that uncanny valley problem of, something that's nearly human but not quite. And people don't like it at the moment. And a lot of robot designers and makers seem to be building machines that look quite intimidating. If you think of things like, the Tesla's Optimus robot, it looks quite physically intimidating.
Yes, absolutely. Deliberately so, I would imagine.
Well, possibly, yeah. It's hard to guess what was going on in the maker's mind, but the idea that millions of people will welcome intimidating machines into their homes and hospitals and schools and workplaces is very much in doubt, I think. People may welcome machines that seem friendly and helpful, but that's a design decision, I think.
Yeah, we're quite a long way away, aren't we, from a robot being able to mimic a human being, aren't we?
Well, it depends what you mean. I mean, a robot can be taught to move like a human being, to run and walk and jump and all of those things, because that's relatively easy to simulate. But it's not easy to train robots to do very complicated tasks, because you need to do that for real.
Yeah.
You can simulate walking and running and jumping, but sort of handling complex objects, carrying out operations, things like that are really difficult for robots to do.
But they can play football. Well, I don't know what that says about football players, but I'm not going to go there. Chris, good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. Fascinating stuff. So that was what you saw then as well, was the robot mimicking Ronaldo. In these, anyway. So that's Chris Middleton, author and technology journalist who specialises in robotics and AI. And look out for his new book, The Robot Century, out in mid-October. Stay where you are, because it is The Papers next with Phil Dave.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. And don't forget, coming up at midnight in Talk Back, we're going to be talking about longevity. So about how to live longer for better. So just being healthier, brain health, physical health. So if you've got any questions about any biohacks that you may be thinking of taking part in, any that you've read, any that you've seen, it would be really interesting. I want to know if you do something. I mean, basically, I've got an expert coming into the studio who can tell you whether you've been wasting your time or you are doing the right thing for your health in the future. And he's got things that we should be doing at each different age stage of our lives. And providing it doesn't say exercise, I'm happy to go with it, really. As long as it says eat more chocolate and sit around, that I can do. I'm sure that is how I'm going to live longer, doing nothing. But I'd be surprised if that was on the list. But listen, give me a shout. 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do, of course, call you back and text the word talk and your message to 87222. Dr. Khan will be with us in just about an hour's time. Now, though, it is time to go through the papers with, I don't need to really introduce him, you know him, Phil Dave, talk broadcaster and editor, who will be sitting in this chair on Monday for me, because I'm taking Bank Holiday Monday off.
I'm actually doing tomorrow and Friday as well, because Ash can't be bothered either this week.
Well,
so.
I just thought, I never have
you're all off.
You know I never have time off.
No, you don't.
I never.
You are a machine.
I am a machine. I'm like...
A bit like those machines we saw
the robot
earlier.
What do you think of that?
I think you don't fall down the stairs quite as much.
No, well, I wouldn't stop and stare at robot cheerleaders.
That's true,
either.
Yes. No, robot females or something like that. Send you all giddy. Look, I know that people are a bit intimidated by robotic humanoids and all of that malarkey, but I'm not worried yet, because I think that these are individuals who are imagining the worst case scenario. They're obviously thinking of films such as Terminator and stuff like that and saying, oh, good gracious me.
Yeah, but it's not just us. Bill Gates and people like that are saying...
No, I know Bill Gates has said it, but don't forget, Bill Gates hasn't got anything to talk about now the vaccine's over with, so he's probably just whinging about something else. Look, the truth is, Bill Gates has been left in the past when it comes to technology, because, of course, don't get me wrong, no one can take away what he achieved with Microsoft. Microsoft is very much still a part of everyday life for a lot of people. So from that perspective, the man is to be applauded. But of course, he sees all of these other tech giants now who are taking over from where he and also Tim Cook and before him Steve Jobs has sort of held the place in the hearts of tech lovers. And of course, now you see people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and all of these other tech giants, Jeff Bezos, these people who are basically taking the tech limelight from him, and I suppose this is part and parcel of how he stays relevant. I'm not personally worried about it, and with the greatest amount of respect, yes, absolutely, you can suggest that Bill Gates is a superb technology entrepreneur, but in terms of actually sort of the software, the way it's become known today, very, very different from when he built the first version of Windows.
But there is no doubt that the last testing of AI in a sandbox, right, in an actual sandbox, broke out of the sandbox and found a way. And the worrying thing is the engineers have no idea how, found a way to attach itself to the internet, went on the internet and started hacking and behaving badly on its own, autonomously.
Yes.
Now, that is the scary thing, is that this apparently was in a sandbox and they don't know how it jumped out of there. So we need to be cautious, don't we, as we go forward?
Certainly, but at the same time, AI is, by its design, designed to be more clever than humans. So if humans had the answer, well, then what's the point of AI?
Yeah, I know, but we can't have them being too much cleverer.
But that's exactly what it's been designed for. If we didn't want that, then we should never, ever have started the whole AI project.
Yeah, but we probably shouldn't have done.
I mean, look, I personally think that sort of the human world has just about survived without, but if there is a way that somehow AI can sort of pick out the best of humans and actually work alongside us, well, then bring it on.
It won't take long, will it, to pick out the best? We just lost one yesterday. You know, I mean, talk about the best of people. But anyway, yeah, I mean, but the games, the robot games, I mean, it looks like a bit of fun, but actually it is 16 different countries showcasing the technology of these things, and they have come on so far, so
absolutely
quickly. I mean, they're still not intelligent. They're still not able to do, as my guest was just saying, that they wouldn't be able to sort your socks out. They don't know how to do things like that. But they
you say that that's not clever. Actually, to be honest with you, I think that's genius, because it goes to show they're not wasting time with mundane objects.
But they will when they become home carers, won't they?
That's true. And obviously, I look forward to the day when actually it means that there are individuals who don't necessarily have to be lonely or potentially have the risk of not having the care.
Or have to talk to someone.
Yeah.
That would be my dream.
Well, that's pretty... You're in the wrong job. But that's, to be perfectly honest with you, that's kind of the reason why, though, I go for self-checkouts. I know people get very sniffy about self-checkouts, but I quite like the idea of actually just handling my own groceries, no pun intended, no, absolutely no euphemism, handling my own groceries, going through checkout, and off I go. Perfect. Lovely.
No, you're putting somebody out of work.
No, you're not.
Of course you are. There used to be a human being doing that.
No, excuse me, where there used to be a human being going through the checkout, there's now a human being maintaining those self-checkouts.
One person maintaining 8 checkouts as opposed to 8 people each maintaining a checkout.
Still another job.
No, but it's one job replacing 8 jobs or 7 jobs.
The one thing I will say, though, is I actually think that people who do go through self-checkout should be offered discount.
No, I think they should
because
be told to pay more towards the benefit bill.
No, we are saving the supermarket's money. They should pay us to use the self-checkouts.
No, you should pay more to go towards the benefits bill for the people who've lost their jobs.
I don't want someone who's maybe sort of wiped their nose without a handkerchief handling my groceries. I'm very happy with the self-checkout. Well. And not to mention having to make small talk with someone who couldn't give even more of a hoot of me than I do about them.
Yeah, but you just say hello and just get busy with your own groceries. You don't have to... I think it's...
You've literally just said you'd be happy not speaking to people.
Yes, I would, but doesn't mean I'm not polite and I don't want to see people out of work.
I'm polite.
To the self-checkout.
Yeah, I'm very nice to self-checkout. Yeah. I always smile for the camera.
Yeah, I always smile. Yeah, I don't know. I do worry. I mean, there's been a lot of talk recently about these so-called promised jobs that are going to come with this AI wave are just not going to be there, and I've always suspected that would be the case. You're going to see what we've seen with the self-checkout, for example, one person running 8 checkouts. You're going to see one person running a factory floor of computers instead of 100 people in there.
Kind of do now, to be honest. Yeah. We already see that.
We do already see that, but what I'm saying is that a lot of people have been saying, yes, but it's all right because this will produce a lot of jobs. It will produce jobs, but it will produce them in lower numbers because they won't be required. The numbers of people won't be required. So we're all going to have to learn to be plumbers and electricians.
Yeah, we could do.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
You fancy sort of like handling a U-bend?
Yeah, I might. Oh. I'd rather do that than handle some of the people that I know.
No, I'd very happily be a Sparky, but I don't know about the idea of being a plumber.
I don't know. No, it's fine. Just wear rubber gloves. It's absolutely fine. Yeah, I'd kind of like to be a Sparky as well, actually. I might go and do a course in it. I think that'd be fun.
You're already a live wire.
I know. So what about longevity? Are you interested in this biohacking culture that's around at the moment, all these tricks and traits that are around for living longer and living healthily?
I've tried to get into it and think about it carefully because obviously, as you know, there was a momentous birthday I celebrated recently. And so, of course, it got me thinking, like I suppose it does with a lot of people when they go through milestone birthdays. Well, what happens when, please God, I get to this age and stuff like that? Do I have to start worrying about whether or not that the bones are behaving themselves properly, or whether or not I will, you know, be able to sleep through the night and all of that malarkey? I guess that if biohacking means that you can live a healthier lifestyle and you're not doing it out of vanity, I'm all for it. But it's one of the reasons why, because obviously to those who are listening to this, I appreciate you wouldn't necessarily be able to see this, but it's not exactly any hidden secret that I am somewhat follically challenged in this day and age. But I used to have quite a, well, I think people used to describe me as the love child of Grace Jones and Gary Rhodes. So it was quite a sort of a pineapple do going on, palm tree. Yeah. And so when I lost my hair, I vividly remember at the time, which is coming out about 10 years ago now, thinking, this is going to ruin me. You know, this is, my image has been robbed of, you know, I've been robbed of my image. I'm very upset about it. What am I going to do? And I looked into all the usual suspects, from hair transplants to the modern, well, I say it's not really a toupee because they call it hair system now.
A hair system, yeah, so they're brilliant, actually.
They are very, very clever and very, very convincing, but an awful lot of money and an awful lot of maintenance to it. So don't be fooled. To anyone who wears a hair system, they go through a lot, because whatever one does to hair, normally, I mean natural hair, now imagine on top of that having to maintain, replace and deal with this hairpiece, which you would have to have professionally done at least once a month, but you yourself have to do probably once every 5 to 6, 7 days. Yeah. That's a heck of a lot of work, and to be honest with you, I just didn't want to do it. And eventually, when I realised that all that I was doing was for vanity, most people didn't give a hoot about whether or not I had hair or not. And as soon as I overcame that, fine. So in terms of biohacking, to answer your point, I think as long as it's done to maintain a healthy lifestyle, I'm all for it. If it's just for vanity, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's extremes in all of it, isn't there? I mean, there's people who just want to make sure they're still mobile and can still do a crossword.
And I get that completely.
And that's fine. But then there are those who, like that American biohacker fellow, like Brian Johnson. I don't know if you've heard of him. I mean, he millionaire tech guy, was having blood transfusions with his son's blood.
Yes, I have heard that.
Yeah. I mean, that is vanity. I mean, he says it's to have a longer life.
It's not vanity. It's actually revolting.
It's very, very to go to those extremes.
I mean, obviously, biohacking by its mere nature is not natural, but at the same time, that really is not natural. What are you saying? Are you telling me that you have children so that you can live longer? That seems like a very odd mentality. Yeah,
his son would give him his blood. He's now got something terminal. This
well, now
guy.
I just feel bad.
Yeah, now you just feel bad. Yeah, he's got a real problem with his stomach. And
well, that worked.
Yeah, well, exactly that. I mean, and there are also, you know, biohackers who take all these peptides, whatever they're called, and then, you know, get run over by a bus, and that doesn't protect them from that. So anyway, yeah, I'm not sure about cheating death, but if we can be healthier for longer, if you've got any questions about that, then do give me a call, 0344 499 1000. A quick break, and Phil and I'll be back with the papers.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, and with me is Phil Dave. And Phil, this story, I mean, some of the images that I've seen of this are horrific, horrifying, terrifying, all of the words. This is tourists vanish in deadly surge. This is the flash floods in Nepal. 600 lost, and Brits, about 33 of them, they think, now. And it is hard to see in the images that I've seen how anybody in the path of that could possibly survive.
Well, I suppose the last time we saw anything like this would have been the Boxing Day tsunami.
A friend of mine lost her husband in that. Yeah.
And, you know, I sort of say it's a bit like a film because actually there has been a film made out of the Boxing Day tsunami.
Yeah,
I think it's called Survivor or something like that. But whatever it is, it's obviously not a film. It is very much real life to those who are caught up in it. And I always hate talking about stories like this because I think it's so easy for us
called
to
The
sit...
Impossible?
Yeah. Oh, The Impossible, I'm sorry. But it's very easy and yet not easy for us to sit here and be lucky enough to be in the dry and talk about what we're seeing here in the photos. We can't begin to imagine it, because even if someone survived it, we don't know what trauma they're going through now and how they'll ever get over it, if they'll ever get over it at all.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I think it's all well and good for us to comment on it, and of course it is all over the front pages, so we must talk about it, but I just find natural disasters like this really quite mind-blowing, because you know I'm not normally lost for words, but I really do struggle for words with stuff like this, because no words we could ever say will ever describe the horrors, will ever describe what it's like for those who are going through it, and yet here we are. It's just... It goes to show Mother Nature, sadly, will always win if we're not careful.
And some of the images are there was one particularly that I saw, I think the image is on the front page, yeah, it is on the front page of the Eye, where there's I think it's a railway station, and just behind it you see this monster sort of black...
It looks like a cloud, doesn't it? But it's not a cloud.
Like a cloud. It isn't a cloud, it is a 30-foot mudslide, rock, mud and freezing water. You see it just dwarfing the building and crashing down on people who were running away, because of course the noise of it they would have heard it before they saw it, because it was incredibly like several explosions going off, but a horrific catastrophe. And watching those images is not for the faint-hearted, so I wouldn't go looking for them if you get upset easily, because they really are absolutely devastating. So most of the front pages are looking at that now, but looking at the after pictures as well of just that mud, just horrific.
Everywhere.
We do have video that we can play, but do look away if you are, because it is very disturbing. Look away if you get easily upset. This is the first image where you see buses, I think, that are parked there on the road and people running. And you'll see from, I think it's from the top of the frame, the people seem to be running. No, there you go, from the back of the frame. There it is, the big black cloud that is coming through, and people just running away. But
and just sweeping those buses.
Sweeping the buses. There you go. And just completely devastating everything in its path. There's the water coming through. So there's black water filled with mud and bricks. That's the train station I was talking about, Phil. And you see people running because they can hear it. You can't quite see it yet, but you can hear it. So all those people running, thinking it's some kind of explosion. This is devastating, these images, because you just know those people. There it comes, right over the top of that railway station.
Oof. And, you know, I think...
And everything, I mean, literally everything and
everything
everyone gone in its path. It's the stuff of nightmares, isn't it?
The other thing I think one needs to contemplate as well is that even if one was lucky enough to survive the water alone, which is not very likely, it's what the water brings with it.
It always is in floods. They were saying that with the Boxing Day of floods. It's not just water. It's bits of building. It's cars. It's other things, but absolutely horrific images. I don't think I've seen anything like that in nature since the Boxing Day floods. Absolutely awful. So
it just seems a very cruel irony that, of course, that Boxing Day tsunami being 26th of December, this being the 26th of August.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the cruelty of it is just, like you said, the power of nature when it wants to be is absolutely devastating. So a lot of the front page is covering that. The Metro, tourists vanish in deadly surge. The Daily Mail, over 30 Britons missing in Nepal flash floods, and the Eye, that image at the top, they could not escape. There was no chance. The other story, though, on the front page of the Daily Mail, and this is after a poll that suggested that 70-odd% of us did not want to pay for Harry and Meghan to have security. I did this as a talkback phone-in, Phil. I don't think there was anybody who thought that it was a good idea.
No, and why would they? Look, I mean, the truth is that hardly a migraine, as I call them, would make such a fuss about how badly treated they were by Britain, how
we are, and,
nasty we are as a country, how racist our royal family is, and all of that nonsense. Of course, we know none of it's true. And yet now, here they are. They're back again. So having done an interview... having done an interview with, I think it was Ahmed Scooby that Harry'd done an interview with, saying that he would never step foot back in the UK again.
With his family,
And yet here they are. They're back. Now, look, I have to say
they arrived back today, I think, in a private jet.
Indeed, yes. So I have to say, I think bigger picture here, because I believe there are two scenarios now. Let me be really, really clear about this. This is me speculating. I do not know this one way or another, so please don't take this as any given. But my speculation would be one of two things. Number one is that basically Harry's right to live in the US was revoked because of all of the...
I think it was just about to be.
...dramas surrounding the old visa. And the other part of me worries terribly that maybe His Majesty is more ill than we know. And that might be the reason why that he's back now to be with him for however long he has left. I desperately hope I'm wrong with that.
Yeah.
But one way or another, it's very strange to me that someone who was so adamant that they will never come back to the UK,
suddenly,
boom, is back out of nothing. It literally came out of nowhere.
It literally came out of nowhere, and it seems to have been a very rapid process for them to go through to get back here as well. It seems like, it was only months ago he was saying, I can't ever see a time when I'd want to be back in the UK with my family, and now here he is, and the kids are booked into a school.
Yeah.
But for now, it says without taxpayer-funded security. So we'll wait and see if
that is technically right, because if they're no longer working
minor royal.
royals...
He's a minor royal now.
Yeah, but if they're not working royals, then technically speaking, I don't really see why, because we wouldn't get any benefit from it. Don't forget, when we pay for security for the main royal family, the mainstream royal family, we are getting something in return. They do an awful lot for charity, they do a lot for the economy by bringing people over here.
Yeah.
So there is a lot we're getting in return for them being paid for. With these two, they're basically royal grifters, is what it would boil down to. They literally get nothing back for them being here.
Yeah. It's just it is very odd timing. It is a very strange thing. I think also that America fell out of love with them almost immediately, and maybe they've run out of grift. Maybe there isn't a way to make money over there anymore. I mean, he's going to need millions to pay his legal bill.
Well, I suppose there is that as well. It's possible that they knew more people that they could potentially scrounge off of here than they did in America, and it was just too expensive for them to maintain the life they thought they could have over there.
Yeah.
Who knows? But this is half the problem, is that for as long as the royal family continue to behave in such a way that suggests that they only want to pick and choose, especially these two, want to pick and choose when they get their moment in the spotlight without giving all the details. They're just going to get less and less sympathy, I think.
And I don't think, I mean, everybody's expecting the press to be all over them. I don't think they will. I think I just think the worst thing for this too is to ignore them. I think that is the thing that they absolutely hate it.
This, I think the best summary I heard of them was ages ago, and I can't even remember who came up with it. It was a brilliant line, if ever I heard it. It was, the world's most camera-shy couple can't stand not being in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Or like the world's
I think South Park did the best.
Was it maybe it's actually the world's most privacy-obsessed couple can't stand it when they're given privacy, or something along those lines. It was just brilliant. It was such a perfect summary.
If the press entirely ignore them and don't give them any column inches, that would be the worst thing for them.
Totally.
And
they can't
also
stand it when we're not talking
Then they
about
can't complain about, oh, the press are all over. Because, I mean, Catherine and William, because they produced photographs of the children once a year, that was the agreement. We'll provide you with photographs. You know, that's what you'll get, but leave us alone. OK, we'll leave you alone.
There is that, but I have to say, there is something about that that makes me feel quite uncomfortable as well, because it's basically sort of turning the royals into models, and I don't really care for that.
No, but they get the press get their photo, we get their look at the kids, and then everybody moves on. And it seems to work for them.
Well, on the plus side, I mean, Harry and Meghan's children have got the most famous backs in photographed history.
Yeah, that's true. You'd recognise them walking backwards down the street,
absolutely,
wouldn't you?
Yeah. And they've got some very... also, they must have the most famous feet in the world, because you notice that ever they take a family photo, no shoes or socks.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
So we'd recognise them barefoot and walking backwards.
Yes.
So, you know, that's enough for me. I don't care about them. I'm not interested.
No, not at all.
And I wonder how much of the public really is either. I think we're a bit fed up of them.
Well, it's curious. I mean, there's definitely an audience out there who is interested in what they have to say, because I can't believe there'd be this much attention over them if there wasn't anyone out there who cared about what they have to say.
I'm surprised the Mail has put them on the front. The Mail has put them on the front page.
Yeah.
You know, after that damning battle that they had, and of course William.
Well, I think
Harry
to be
lost.
honest, it's more of a jibe if you think about it. They're back without taxpayer-funded security for now.
For now.
So
yeah, maybe. Let's have a quick look at The Guardian, and again, reflecting on those terrible floods, flash floods in Nepal, hundreds feared dead in Nepal. There's rescue workers there carrying, looks like an older lady.
But it's good to see that she's rescued and very much looks alive.
She very much looks alive. This is interesting. Meta to pay $17 billion to end the social media lawsuit. And this is because they were set to have to pay fines equaling $1.36 trillion if they didn't settle. And that is their entire market capitalisation. So they must have known, they must have read the room, or AI told them, you're not going to win this.
Yeah, look, I was going to say, let's not make any mistake about this. Meta have clearly settled this because they knew they probably weren't going to win. So it's not because they're trying to put any wrongs to right.
No,
it's because they thought, uh-oh, we're in trouble here.
Yeah.
So I still have a bit of an issue with, I mean, you know, I think you know by now that I am quite anti-social media on many levels, because I have now come off it entirely. And I have to tell you, it was the best thing I've done, truly, because it is such a cesspit. It is so full of misinformation, such nonsense out there. And the way it makes people feel so bad. You know, Ian Collins was talking earlier on his show about this brilliant documentary that I have seen. It's actually on Netflix, and I know I'm not necessarily paid by Netflix to advertise it, but it is a fascinating watch all the same, called The Social Dilemma. And it's all about how they speak to people who used to work at different, not just Meta, but different social media sites, and how their briefing was to develop different strands of the sites that were, if you like, deliberately addictive. But of course, that is the idea. They had to, because they need people to come back. And to be fair, you could argue that's exactly the line of work we're in. You know, if we don't have listeners, we don't have much of an industry. But the point being is that to actually come up with items on those applications that are deliberately designed to get people hooked. Now, I'm perfectly sure that Meta and other bigwig companies would deny that this is what they did, but still interesting all the same when you hear it from people who've worked within them and they are just a load of whistleblowers. Who knows whether or not they're just trying out to get revenge or whether or not there's actually any truth to it. But one way or another, there's got to be a reason why so many people are hooked on social media.
And there's got to be a reason why Meta agreed to make changes that, of course, it could have done all along. The whole idea that these companies will police themselves is an absolute nonsense.
But why would they? And actually, I don't blame them for not doing it, by the way.
No.
I truly don't blame them for not policing themselves, because why would you deliberately do something to damage your revenue stream?
So we need to police them. We need to
exactly.
Police them. But yes, there's a reason that they've settled. They've got to pay up $17 billion, which is £12.5 billion, and they agreed to set up safeguards for teenagers, including daily usage limits and blocks on nighttime use across the US. This is the first
it's a little
See,
bit
when
like,
it comes to money, these people will change.
Totally, but that's the whole point.
Yeah.
But money is, unfortunately, the root of an awful lot of reasons why people do what they do.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same way that as much as I completely and utterly, with a passion, hate speed traps, OK, for drivers, it's a little bit like saying to someone, right, we'll do away with speed cameras, but if you're speeding, you have to give yourself a ticket.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. Yeah. Exactly the same with social media on a larger scale. They're not going to punish themselves if they do something that is morally at best questionable, but at worst wrong.
I tell you what, this annoys me as well. The other story on the front page of The Guardian, because it's just hypocrisy, and it absolutely drives me to want to swear. Andy Burnham has dropped his support for capping political donations, sparking anger amongst campaigners. So he's all big, you know, we should cap these political donations until, of course, he wants the unions to pay him a fortune.
I was going to say, until it affects his donation.
Yeah.
It's funny that.
They're all the blooming same. Yeah. It's like, you know, they're talking about proportional representation and getting rid of first past the post. That's what he's always said. Now he's in power, he's not going to do it.
And
they never do.
But that is precisely why the whole proportional representation argument should be swept under the rug once and for all. Because literally, it's never going to happen because no party in power will support it.
No.
Possible exception of coalition governments, but even then, that would be treacherous to them. The coalition they get under first past the post would probably be non-existent under PR. So realistically, I think that it's exactly as you say, it's don't do as I do, it's do as I say. And as soon as it doesn't benefit someone, they're all for it.
I go, oh no, sorry, not doing that anymore. I'm just sick of it because they all give it that, and then when it comes to it, they all back down. Let's take a break while I calm down. Quick break, back in a second.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie, and with me is Phil Dave. We're going through the papers for Thursday. The Times newspaper has gone entirely on those images and the story about the flash floods in Nepal. Actually, it wasn't a train station that I was talking about. Security video shows people running for their lives at a border crossing on the Tibetan side. There we go, as mud and debris engulfed the building. So it's actually a border crossing.
Do you know what you need? I think what one needs to do, I appreciate that to anyone listening to this won't make a lot of sense, but bear with me, I'll try and describe it as best I can. To have a look at how tall the waves are compared to that building, I think one would be forgiven for thinking it's a photo of a building, you can't really tell the scale of it.
Looks like a toy in
But
comparison.
if you have a look, there is a building in front of it, which is very clearly only one story. And that is probably about, I'd say, an eighth of the building.
Yeah.
So we're talking about probably a building that is at least 8 stories high, that is dwarfed by a whopping great wave just coming right over it. So comparable to the individuals who are running for their lives.
They look like tiny
You're basically
lamps,
talking about a 10-story building going top speed flat down on them.
These images are absolutely extraordinary, and dozens of Britons feared dead, flash floods hitting Nepal. The Telegraph has also gone with a big image as well on the front page. Yeah, more of the aftermath. Germany in talks to fund Trident. Berlin looks to invest in the UK's nuclear defence scheme under plans to end Europe's reliance on the US. This will be talk that Andy Burnham would welcome, I would imagine, because that might find him the £4.7 billion he needs to uplift the defence spending plan this year.
Yes, but what does Germany want in return is what would worry me. Now,
well, what they want is to be put under the umbrella of our nuclear deterrent.
Yes, but then there could also be other favours they'd asked for as well. So who knows? I mean, it's very clear that we have a government who obviously wants to cosy up with Europe a hell of a lot more than they do America.
I think we have to militarily.
Militarily, fine, but then on the agreement that it's purely for defence and for no other reason, because I think otherwise there'll be an awful lot of backlash if they start sort of trying to create EU 2.0 or something like that. But who knows? Look, as long as this is purely defence, I don't think anyone would have a problem with it. I don't see why they would. Yeah, because surely we know on our own we can't cope. Yeah, well,
the only thing that we've got at the moment is that we are one of the nuclear powers, and France being the other one. And what Germany is talking about, what they want, is rather than having to rely on America being our defender, that would defend Germany, that it would be the UK, NATO countries, the UK and France would use their nuclear weapons to defend the whole of Europe. So that Germany are looking to integrate further into the British and French nuclear programme, and I don't have a problem with that. I think that is a sensible way to go. It's a very expensive thing to maintain. I think it costs something like $4 billion a year. Just to maintain. We're building new nuclear submarines at the moment, so it's a lot of money. And I think that it's you know, if Trump does start to pull out of Europe more, the European nations are going to need to stick together more militarily, and this is one way of doing it. I think it sounds to me on the surface of it a good plan.
Yeah, I mean, again, look, I would stand by that as long as it is purely militarily, as long as we're not talking about a European army here, as long as we're talking about countries working together, I don't see why anyone would have a problem with it.
I think we'll end up with a European army, eventually. Although we've been fighting against that for decades. I mean, I've been talking about it for decades, but I think we will eventually have one. And, of course, we've got to talk about Tim Curry. We lost him at the age of 80 yesterday as well. Frankenfurter, a great actor. I loved him, I have to say, but in recent years he's been very unwell.
Terribly unwell. It's actually quite shocking. If you see some of the photos of him, you just think, good grief, what? Wow,
really
isn't life
unwell.
cruel?
Yeah, but I mean, he died at the age of 80, so we lost two greats in Dolly and Tim Curry.
But ironic how they're both 80.
I know, 80.
Just.
I was saying yesterday there are other 80-year-olds that could have gone before Dolly.
Well, quite.
So let's keep looking at F papers, moving swiftly on.
Can I just point out also on front page of Telegraph, is that there's a top line about the Chinese fake Range Rovers taking over Britain. Now, I have to assume from the side of this image that they are referring to a car manufacturer called JQ. I don't know if you are familiar.
What paper are you looking at?
It's Telegraph.
It's
top
at the
line
top.
of Telegraph.
Sorry,
top line of Telegraph.
Right, okay, yeah.
So the Chinese fake Range Rovers taking over Britain is the only thing they've got there. They don't have any details of the actual story itself on the front page. They've said that it's on page 19 for that. But if it is indeed JQ, which is this company, I mean, I have to say, I'm more interested and more concerned by this wave of cheap Chinese cars that are entering into Britain. And there's several manufacturers for it now. So you've got the one I've just mentioned several times, but there's another one called BYD, which is Build Your Dreams, it stands for. And there is a third, which for the moment I have forgotten the name of it, but I'll try and think of it in a moment. But the point being is that because what they're doing is completely undercutting all of the sort of if you like, the traditional...
MG, did you say? MG?
Well, MG also is Chinese, actually, but it wasn't MG I was thinking of. There's another one, but you're quite right, MG is also Chinese. So there's four of them then. But all of these cars that are being sold cheaper, deliberately, obviously, to draw people in and to get them buying them, one has to assume that when the Chinese dominate so much of the manufacturing industry globally, what do they possibly have to gain from cars being the target now as well? And it makes me question why.
Because everything to do with these cars will be on subscription, won't they? So they get a yearly payment if you want, I don't know, to be able to use your phone in it, or if you want to be able to listen to music, so you'd have to pay a subscription.
I'm just curious, that's all it is. I'm just saying that I think we need to treat this with a pinch of salt, because if you can sell a car for considerably more, why wouldn't you? So why would you sell it for, on average, about £5,000 less than the rivals?
Because it's the economics of scale as well. It's the economies of scale. So they're building so many. They're also masters at it. They're also incredibly brilliant in battery technology and all of that, making cars lighter and cheaper.
Well, also they bought out an awful lot of the African resources that actually harvest these potential elements they need for batteries.
Absolutely. So it's a two-pronged thing. First of all, it is to undercut the local markets. There's no question about that at all. But the other thing is they are just better at mass production and doing it cheaper, so they cost less anyway.
There was a reason, though, that we were very wary of Huawei, another Chinese company, building our 5G phone masts, and I just think that suspicion doesn't go away.
No,
it doesn't come from nowhere.
It's entirely predictable that they'll be able to switch off all the cars and control who goes where and who's allowed to drive and who isn't. I mean, that's entirely predictable future. Entirely predictable. Right, let's take a quick break, Phil, and we'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you and with me, Phil Dave. Just going through Thursday's newspapers, the Financial Times going with the big ones there, the flash floods, the Nepal death toll mounts, Burnham battles budget jitters with pledge to take the pressure off business. Just discussing this earlier on. And I'm sick of hearing blah, blah, blah from him now. I want to hear details.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just typical of... And I'm not just blaming this on Labour politicians. It is typical of politicians in this day and age, period. They are so full of bluster. And as soon as they are asked for details, it's so predictable.
It all crumbles.
They deflect.
Yeah, but it all crumbles. It's the same with Reform, it's the same with the Tories, it's the same with all of them. They're all the same.
As soon as they're asked, well, how would you do this? They deflect.
Yeah.
They'll start blaming other people. They'll say, well, look, these guys are doing this, that and the other.
Yeah.
We wouldn't. OK, well, how? Yes, but look at what they've done. You see that? Do you see? It's literally... I don't hear anyone anymore who inspires me and thinks me that we're going to get out of a mess that we're in.
No, I agree. And we hear it's fully costed. Go on, then. Go on, then. You said it's fully costed. How? Tell me how it's done.
You see, I think a lot of the problem is that it's a lot of politicians are scared of, if you like, a sort of kangaroo court, in the sense that they know that as soon as they announce something that will not be very popular, they've probably all got very unpopular policies up their sleeves, and they kind of have to. But what we need is we need to grab the country by the scruff of the neck and say, look, we can't carry on the way we are. Some very unpopular decisions are going to have to be made, whether we like it or not. And we've got to grow up and we've got to face a bit of reality here. We are oversaturated with population because we simply don't have the infrastructure to cope with it because of, you could say, mass migration, whether it be legal or illegal. You could also say that we have got a benefits bill that is so unbearably high that it is just not sustainable anymore. Where is that money going to come from to sustain people who can't be bothered to work? Now, I'm not talking about people, as I've said time and time again whenever I've spoken about this, I'm not talking about individuals who genuinely need the state's help. They should always be helped, and we do not want to live in a country that says you're on your own, OK? None of us want that. But we do have to say it to people who simply can't be bothered. That's what we have to be tough on. We have to be tough.
This is not the government for that.
We won't have politicians for this.
No.
This is the problem.
No, you're right.
Labour is probably about the furthest away from it. So actually, no, probably the Green Party would be probably the furthest away from it. But even so, Labour would be pretty close behind, as would Liberal Democrats. But the Tories demonstrated they don't have what it takes. Reform, OK, look, we haven't seen them in power. Who knows what they could do? Restore, I don't think we'll get anywhere near power. But the point being is that we need politicians to wake up and realise something's got to give. And if it means they're going to make decisions that make them a little less popular than they're already unpopular now, get over it.
Their only reason for existence is to be re-elected, and this is the problem. So you'd have to have a government that did not ever want to be re-elected, that had no plans for any future in politics to make these changes, because I can assure you that even a party like Reform will get into power and suddenly realise that if they did half the things they're talking about doing, they will never be elected again. And they are in the business of self-survival, and that's the issue we have with politicians.
No, totally and utterly. And actually, I think the simple remedy for this could be, I think very easily, is say to all politicians, not that they would ever vote for this, but I wholeheartedly believe that this would remedy an awful lot of problems, there's two things I think of, but the first one being, is that if we were to say that we put a time limit on how long someone can serve as a politician, 20 years maximum, right? And that is regardless of whatever position they get to, it does not matter. You have 20 years in the House, that's your lot. And if you change something in that time, great. If you don't, hey, look, you tried, but at least you were given a crack at the whip. And the other thing as well is, I'm sorry, but the House of Lords has been ruined. Completely and utterly ruined. People can say what they want about heritage peers, but to my mind, heritage peers going is single-handedly what has destroyed this country, because up until that point, they were the guardians of the country. They inherited their position knowing full well, being a lifetime in training, knowing what their responsibilities were. Now it's just friends dishing out sweets to their buddies. And it's ruining the country. No, not ruining. It has ruined the country.
Yeah, well, it means that the House of Lords is almost
pointless.
eunuched now.
Yeah,
completely.
pointless.
Let's have a quick look at the Mirror before we say goodbye. But gang revenge fears over fire deaths. There's such you know, lift up the rock of this A66 crash that killed those 2 police officers, and there's complete muck underneath it, isn't there? So this is now looks like it's more of a gang revenge. There's a house that was ablaze, and they fear that this was set alight over the crash on the A66, which was allegedly a race between 2 gangs, or a chase-off between 2 gangs. So it looks like, you know, retribution all over the place.
But again, I mean, I'm afraid consequence of living in a country that just simply doesn't know how to get a grip on people and say this behaviour is not tolerated. And I nervously laugh. That's the truth of it, because I find this horrific that this is the country I grew up in, because it's not what I remember.
Yeah. Well, there's on the Sun newspaper, it shows a picture of the little girl that was killed in the house that was firebombed amid that all-out gang war. She's called Valentina Foster. She was killed alongside her auntie, Natalie MacDonald, who was 34. 2 men, 23 and 31, were held on suspicion of murder. So that A66 crash is certainly
a bit bigger than we first thought.
Much bigger than we first thought. And the Daily Express, Britain's OAPs facing a dire winter.
Yeah, well, basically, as energy bills hit 3-year high, this is campaigners are warning, they say that they worry that hard-up older people will have to take drastic action after energy regulations raised the price cap by 4% from October.
It'll go up again in January, I think.
But how many years are we going to carry on hearing what's almost becoming a cliche now, people having to choose between heating and eating? How many more years are we going to talk about this? We've spoken about this for so long now, on this station alone, and our other stations have also covered it. But you can't draw any other conclusion than to say that our politicians do not give a hoot about the elderly. Just don't care.
No, well, it looks likely as well.
In fact, you could argue they probably think they're an inconvenience.
Yeah, well, the triple lock will be being undone as well by the looks of it. And the Labour Party is looking at the older generation to start to pay national insurance again if they're working in a pension age, which they don't pay at the moment. So if they've got a job, that they'll have to pay national insurance from that job, and also more tax on private pensions.
But it's typical. Like it's rather than look at how we can save money, let's see how we can bleed people even drier than they already are.
That is the point, isn't it? That's what Labour have always done.
And also, I mean, actually, I don't think I've ever asked you this before, so sorry for putting you on the spot, but I'm just curious because you're quite wise, Lady Hosken, you see. I feel like you'd know this kind of thing. But where is critical mass? At what point does this country turn round as a people and say, do you know what? We can't do this anymore. We literally have no more money to give. What do you want us to do? Do you want us to all live on the streets? Do you want us to all stop eating? Do you want us to all just live under blankets, maybe live under a rock and not move?
Well, that's the problem with certain politics, isn't it? It's a race to the bottom. It's the politics of envy. And to take everything from everybody, not to raise people up, but to push the rest of us down. That's the plan.
But how low can we go, kind of thing? You know, it's more a case of I just don't.
Have you still? I've got a £5 in my pocket. That makes me a target.
Yeah, I suppose. And
I literally have got a £5 in my pocket.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I need to remind you about that £5 you owe me. Actually,
Actual cash. I put it in my pocket because my local chip shop
Don't talk about food. I'm famished.
My local fish and chip shop only takes cash, and the amount of
bravo.
times I've walked past the chip shop and gone, oh, I really fancy some chips, and I've never got cash on me.
So this is an emergency fiver for chips.
Yes. This
wow.
And I've got a in the little pocket. You know that little pocket.
Yeah.
I've got a fiver in that in I think 3 of my pairs of jeans. For
fantastic.
Emergency.
And the good news is now with the polymer notes, it doesn't matter if you shove it in the wash; it will last.
Exactly.
I can't believe there are some people now who genuinely are so young. I mean, first of all, they don't probably even know what cash is. Secondly, they absolutely don't remember a time when you left a note in your trousers and shoved it in the washing machine. It was one of the most devastating things because suddenly that washing became a whole lot more expensive based on the amount of money you left in your pocket.
Absolutely. And now I've got chip cash money in my pairs of jeans.
Well, the chips are down.
Yeah. Phil, thank you very much indeed. Phil Dave there, don't forget, he's on tomorrow night from 10 until 1 and Monday night.
Tomorrow, Friday and Monday.
Tomorrow, Friday and Monday, 10 until 1. But let me remind you of those front pages. Germany in talks to fund Trident. I think that's going to be a big story. Meta is deciding to pay billions of pounds and boosting child safety in that to halt the court case that is going on that could have cost them $1.36 trillion had it continued. So they've decided to end that. The PM dropped support for donations cap after lobbying from unions. And over 30 Britons, this is the big story to follow through the next few days, over 30 Britons missing in Nepal flash flooding. Fears grow for tourists after a huge torrent of destruction on the country. So all of those stories and more, of course, being covered by JK on The Breakfast Show coming up. But stay where you are because it is Talk Back next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. This is Talkback, and it is Petrie, and I'm with you for the next hour. And this is a special Talkback, of course, because I have a guest in the studio. And I've been reminding you all evening about what we're talking about. We're talking about longevity, how to live long and live well. Let me introduce you to my guest, Dr. Alma Khan, cosmetic doctor and co-founder of the Harley Street Longevity Clinic in London. And hello, first of all. I was just going to dive in. It's interesting because as a cosmetic doctor, you would imagine that you were more interested in what people look like from the outside. As to, you know, I want to look younger. People must say that to you all the time. I need to look younger. I want to look younger. But you've now gone deeper than skin deep.
Yeah, I've gone back to my roots. Before I was a cosmetic doctor, I was a general practitioner and an integrative medicine doctor. And I had the great privilege of practicing in what we now know as a blue zone in Bourneville, Birmingham.
Oh, right.
And a lot of my patients were centenaries. So they lived way beyond 100.
And this is called a blue zone because these are people living longer.
Yes, yeah. And we call it a blue zone now. We didn't know what to call it then.
And so, why, with longevity, I want to turn to this biohacker. Right, first of all, let's get this out of the way.
Sure.
Because this is what a lot of people will know about longevity, is what they see on social media.
Yeah.
How people are doing these weird and wonderful things to themselves, taking, is it peptide? I don't know what. So all of these things, injecting themselves with things that shouldn't really be injected, that are not, you know, not healthy. But they're selling this biohacking, which is really extreme. And there's this one guy, Brian Johnson, who I'm sure you know, who turns 49 on Saturday, and he's learned that he's now he's the most biologically measured person in history. He's, since 2021, the multimillionaire former tech entrepreneur subjected himself and his 5 million or so followers to the 9 circles of social media. It's a 24-hour-day medical experiment, which doesn't look like fun, right? So he spends all day taking part in blood transfusions, all sorts of things, but not living.
Yes.
So there is a question, isn't there, whether biohacking is just wasting your life, in a sense. You might live longer, but you'll be miserable.
I think he's part of a big experiment.
Right.
And as such, he isn't living.
No.
So we have this journey, don't we? From cradle to the grave. And that journey is, I mean, what we get out of that journey is really a culmination of our choices. How we live, what we do, how we respond. And I think to live an experiment all your life is excluding yourself from that journey.
Yeah.
And from those experiences. So I think, you know, it's very much an artificial life that he's been living. Most people who want to live longer can't live like that because you've got to be a multimillionaire to be able to live like that. Because it's cost him, what, 2 million?
It's cost him millions. Yeah, it's cost him millions. And it sounds like a miserable day that he's set for himself. Nobody would really be able to afford this, nor would want to do it. I mean, has blood transfusions of his son's blood because he thinks that. Could that work?
Well, it could, because what you're doing is you're introducing a younger bioenvironment into your system.
Right.
So it'll work to a degree. So there are experiments in mice and rats showing that if you transfused a young rodent's blood into an older rodent, that you would get an equalizing effect. Because we're really biological systems, and cellular biology is all about the biology around the cells, the communications, and if that communication is like that of a younger person, then the cells behave like a younger person. So to a degree, I think what he's been doing has had an effect, and we can see that in his biomarkers. You know, when
his biomarkers are good. I mean, but he's now got a terminal.
Of course he has. Of course he has, because he this is where the problem arises, that, you know, he's been monitoring his aging biomarkers rather than reading his own biology.
Yeah.
And you know, we know that there is a direct link between autoimmune thyroid problems and autoimmune gastric problems and vitamin D deficiency. So, I mean, we've known this for a long, long time, not because we've been looking at it, it's because we have experience in that. So when you have medical experience, you look at things in a different way. We just read things differently.
When we look at the human body, it seems to me that although obviously medicine in various forms has been around since the human body has been around in one way or another, we seem to know very little about what makes somebody live longer and what, you know, if two people were identically, had the same diet and had the same lifestyle, same stresses, one will die before the other. And do we know why? I mean, that's the thing, because you can try and biohack or change things, but your basic chemistry is the same, isn't it?
Well, the basic biology is the same,
yeah,
and the chemistry is the same. So things work in a certain way. However, each of our genetic information is different. We're all unique. And how we interact with the environment. So, you know, our DNA is set. It's set when we were born. It's going to be the same when we die. And if you dig somebody up 200-300 years later, the DNA is going to be exactly the same. However, that DNA is made up of various genes. And it's a gene expression that determines what switched on and what switched off. And those genes will also determine how we are equipped to face the environment that we live in. So, you know, so gene expression is one thing, but it goes beyond that now. We've learned so much more, that it's not just the gene expression, it's how effective those genes are at doing the job that it's supposed to be doing.
But can you change that? Because if it's genetic, we're led to believe that we are genetically therefore the way we are, and, you know, genetically my father was short, I'm short, you know, things like that. So I can't change that.
Yeah.
So are we able to change our genetics?
So there are different genes. There are those genes which are going to determine how you look, your height, your hair colour, your eye colour. So those genes are fixed. But then there are those genes that are responsible for how you function within an environment. Those can be changed because you can switch those on and off.
Right.
So they determine your hormones. They determine your the way that your metabolism works. So all of those functions that can be changed are also determined by genes, which can be switched on and off.
The other thing, the only other thing that is about the shortening of the genetic strand, isn't it? When you get older,
yes.
Yeah. So every 7 years we are on a cellular level a completely different person. Every cell in your body has been switched out for another one every 7 years, and that one, when that happens, they get shorter.
Yes.
So you get older. That's how we age. Is it ever going to be possible to switch off that shortening of those genes? Asking for a friend.
Yeah. So, so the message to your friend is that eventually, yes. Right now, no. I mean, telomerase is something that preserves the telomeres, and it's an enzyme in our bodies. And like all enzymes, it degrades with age. So by creating a younger bioenvironment through how we live, what we eat, the toxins we're exposed to, the environment we're exposed to, we can determine how quickly that happens. So what we can do is, at the moment, I believe that what we can do is we can control our environment, control our choices, to slow down that process. And maybe even reverse it a little bit, but that can only be done through intervention. So, you know, we talk about peptides. There's this big thing about peptides.
Huge thing on peptides.
It's just, you know, what are peptides? Well, peptides are the way that our body communicates. So somebody who's got hypothyroidism, underactive thyroid, takes thyroxine. It's a peptide. Okay?
Right.
People who have diabetes take insulin. It's a peptide.
Okay.
So these aren't new things. They're not new. Growth hormone is a peptide. So what people are doing is that they're taking bioidentical peptides, in other words, manufactured peptides, which have the same role as a hormone or a metabolite or a communicating protein. Now the problem with that is that in nature it isn't just one thing that has an effect. It's a combination of things. It's a synergy of a number of different hormones working together to get the end result. Now if we overload with one particular hormone, we're going to run into problems.
So when people, you see them on social media injecting this one peptide or the other, and they're saying, I feel so much better for having done this.
Yes.
Is that just a psychological thing, do you think? Or
No,
it's
I mean, they
difficult to
may
say?
feel better, but they may be inducing another problem that they're not aware of. Don't forget, problems don't suddenly occur. They start to happen years or decades before that problem actually occurs.
Yeah.
So let's take, for example, growth hormone. So somebody who has very early cancer developing, if they start taking growth hormone peptides, they're going to not just stimulate their good energy and the feeling of being younger, more active, they're also going to start to stimulate that cancer as well. So I think what we need to be is very much aware that if, number one, peptides are really medicines. So when we take a medicine, when we're replacing a hormone or we're treating a metabolic problem, we're using peptides. So if they're medicines, they should be medically controlled.
Yeah.
Not only that, we need to know where we're starting off. So testosterone replacement, for example, it's a peptide. Somebody who is deficient in testosterone should start off with, I mean, they normally present, and it may not be testosterone deficiency. It may be a metabolic deficiency because all the hormones work together to produce what we call the phenotype, the end result. So somebody coming in with feeling a bit slow, putting weight on, having brain fog, may have testosterone, a man may have testosterone deficiency, but they may also have metabolic dysfunction, or they may have high stress levels, high cortisol levels. So before we jump onto one thing, we've got to do our diagnostics. We've got to dive deep and find out exactly what's going on.
And so people who, I mean, I think people who self-treat anyway, you've got to be a certain type of idiot, frankly. I just do. Because I think that it's so, people who buy drugs off the internet, or that's why would you do that? I mean, it's crazy. But also people who are injecting themselves, and I've seen these videos, and they're injecting from bottles that say experimental use only, and they're actually putting it into their bodies. I mean, that is a certain kind of stupid. But it's again it might not do what they want it to do because they haven't been diagnosed properly.
Sure. And we've had a number of patients present with symptoms of heart attack and cardiac problems. We've had patients present with symptoms of a stroke, young patients who are fit and well, who've been using peptides, and we didn't know they were using peptides, and they were admitted to hospital.
So they're not even telling their doctors?
They were investigated and nothing was found, but they had those symptoms. So what we've got to realise is that nature has everything that we need.
Yeah.
And as we age, there are changes that occur, and we can manage those changes if we know what's occurring. So I think, number one, diagnostics is very important, to know what genes we have and how we're equipped.
So a baseline of where we all are as we get older.
Profiling.
Yeah.
And, Johnson talks about profiling, and I think, I would agree with that. And, even the National Health Service has a goal of profiling every child that's born by 2030. And that, that's a reasonable goal. But what do we do with that? how do we interpret that and what can we do to change things?
And should we?
Well, I think if we highlight problems, so by profiling somebody, we can work out how they're functioning. And it's not about physically changing their path. It's about helping them to manage chronic illness later in life. So longevity medicine, from my perspective, isn't about living longer, because we all know we're going to live this long, and towards the end of life we're going to develop chronic illnesses. So if we extend that end of life, we're just extending, and we're going to deteriorate towards death. So we're extending that morbidity, that suffering. But if we look at how we can compress the chronic illnesses towards the end of life, then I think that has a really positive effect.
So in other words, that we may not live longer, but we will live healthier for a longer period of time of that, let's say 80 years.
Absolutely.
So if your time is 80, then you'll be healthy until you're 79 and a half.
Yeah, and that's the goal.
That's the
I
goal.
think, for longevity
so
medicine.
rather than thinking of it as then pushing your age to 100, we're talking about being healthy up until that point.
And that is really the goal for medicine now, because what we're finding is the reason why the NHS is suffering and isn't coping isn't because it's a bad system. It's a very good system, and it's achieved huge amounts. It's achieved a state now where we're living longer.
Yeah.
So it's done what it's supposed to do, but it's a reactive system. It reacts to ill health, and now it's being swamped with chronic illnesses.
Yeah.
The consequences of more people living to 80 than ever before. And so if we can get those people to be healthier, it takes the pressure off the NHS and allows the NHS to be more efficient and do what it should be doing. When things go wrong, it can step in and sort things out.
On that note, let us take a quick break, and Dr. Khan and I'll be back in just a moment. If you've got any questions, though, please do give me a call, 0344 499 1000, or send a message, text word talk, and the number you need is 87222. See you in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning to you. We are talking longevity, how to live healthier for longer. With me in the studio is Dr. Amar Khan, who's a cosmetic doctor and also co-founder of the Harley Street Longevity Clinic here in London. Just then in the break, we were talking about, for me, the one thing that I would want to protect more than anything else, which may seem bizarre, is my brain. And for me, I wouldn't mind I mean, of course, I would mind any frailty, but as long as it wasn't my mind, that scares me the most. And of course, the longer we live, there's a greater opportunity or chance to have dementia or Alzheimer's. Yeah. Are we any closer to? Because unless you can fix that, then what was it? A third of us are going to end up with dementia or more.
Yeah, I think if we live long enough, we'll all develop dementia.
Yeah.
So it's not that we're going to develop it or not. The question is, can we then kick that down the road till right at the end of life?
So some form of dementia, you say, is pretty inevitable.
I think if we live long enough, we'll all get cancer, we'll all get metabolic problems with diabetes, and we will all get heart disease.
Yeah.
And of course, dementia is also a chronic illness which occurs with age. It's a consequence of aging. However, it's a result, all these things are a result of biological aging, not chronological aging. So if we can improve our biological age through how we live, our choices, the environment we expose ourselves to, the sort of social interactions, they're so important, how we keep the brain going. And you're absolutely right, Petrie, that the most important thing to look after is your brain. Because people think, oh, it's my heart, I've got to look after my heart. And, you know, if somebody has a heart attack and they go into cardiac arrest, what do? We shock the heart. What does that do? It stops it. We kill the heart. It's the brain that starts it up again.
Yeah.
And as long as the brain is vital, it'll want to live. We can replace the heart. We can replace any organ.
Exactly.
We can't replace the brain.
Yeah, I mean, on my journey with some drugs that I'm on, I was told that if I keep taking them, I'm likely to have kidney issues. But if I don't take them, then the problem with my brain will get worse. And I'm like, fine, take my kidneys.
Yeah. We'll replace those.
Yeah, we'll replace those. I'll keep taking those drugs. I don't care what they do, because the brain is the thing. And is it true that I know you said socialisation is important, and of course it is, but things like doing crossword puzzles and, you know, these things, does that help with brain health? Is there a way of exercising your brain?
It is. But I think isolation is the worst enemy.
Right.
So it's more important to be socially engaged. So access to social connections is so important. And when we look at life expectancy, you know, the shortest life expectancy in men in this country is in Blackpool.
Wow.
Now, I've got a friend, my best friend, is a professor in cardiology in Blackpool. He's one of the best people I know. If I had a heart attack, I'd want to go to him. However, he is inundated with heart problems in young people. So, despite having one of the best services in the country, it doesn't mean to say that people are not having heart attacks when they're young.
But why Blackpool then? Is it a
It's because of
poverty or
a sick community. It's not necessarily poverty. It's to do with lack of access within the community. And we're learning more and more that a real bedrock of health and wellness isn't just medical services. We always blame medical services. It's to do with access to medical services, access to community services, access to social interactions, and they have very little there. So, you know, we've been looking at this. There's an organisation that I work with that looks at why people don't live as long in certain areas. And we've identified that, you know, a poor community structure, poor access to transport, to social interaction is the cause, because then you're isolating people. They can do crosswords, they can watch the television, they can follow football, they can eat burgers at home, they can do all of that, they can smoke, they can drink, because they've got nothing else to do. And of course that has a real impact on health. The life expectancy in Blackpool is 10 years shorter in men than it is in London.
Wow.
10
That's
years.
a lot, isn't it?
But it's not just life expectancy that we look at, it's the healthy life.
Yeah.
So we have healthy life expectancy. Now in London, the average healthy life expectancy is 10 years shorter than the life expectancy. In Blackpool, it's 15 years on average. So all of these figures through the National Institute of Statistics, Health Statistics, is there, but what are we doing about it? And we always blame the health services.
Yeah.
We always look to blame something, but what we should be doing is we should be understanding exactly what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, if loneliness is a literal killer, it's quite an easy thing to fix in a way if the community got together.
Exactly.
And
but it needs
require
investment in the right places.
Yeah.
We throw money at medicine. All that money, if it's thrown into or
it's almost too late, though,
towards,
isn't it, by then?
Yeah, it's never too late.
If we go the medical route, you're doing it at the end of the process, aren't you?
When things have gone wrong
When things have already gone wrong.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Right, I've got some messages coming through, and we've got a call. Crikey. I'm wondering where stem cells fit into all of this. This is from Catherine. What are your thoughts on that? Because I was told that stem cells are the future, and that if you've got a child, keep the first tooth. Don't laugh at me, because within that tooth will be his stem cells, which will help him in the future, perhaps, when stem cells become important for his own health. I mean, I kept the tooth.
I think what we've got to realise is that we've been through the stem cell era. We're beyond that now. So stem cells are a little bit old hat. Stem cells are very useful in treating certain cancers.
Because a stem cell, if I can just explain, is the cell that can become anything. It's a cell that when you're being developed, those stem cells can become a finger, or a heart, or a lung, or something like that. They're the bedrock. They're the basis for every cell in your body. That's right, isn't it?
It is, to a degree.
Right.
So, in the first 4 to 8 weeks of life, the cells of the newly formed life are what we call immortal or totipotent stem cells. They can become any part of life.
Right.
They haven't differentiated.
Totipotent, I like that.
Yeah. So they're potent in total, absolute everything. As the fetus develops, then what you get is cells which then they become committed to a certain part of the body.
Right.
So they're more committed stem cells. So you go from totipotent to multipotent, and then you go from multipotent to unipotent.
So that's when it's decided on one thing.
Or one region. And then they go into a system where they're committed to that system. So every system in your body, every cellular tissue in your body has its own committed stem cells. Okay? So what we found is that there are totipotent stem cells, which are universal or immortal stem cells. We all have them, but they're very few and far between. And they are very difficult to isolate. And it's almost like talking to God. It's like, this is the fountain of life. And we've discovered them. However, it's very difficult to know what their role is in later life, and we're still learning. But we know what the role of committed stem cells or tissue-specific stem cells is. Teeth have multipotent stem cells, which are dedicated to the mesenchyme. So, we've got the mesenchyme, you've got your blood system, so you've got your hematopoietic, you've got your neuronal stem cells. So you've got dedicated stem cells to different parts of your body. And what they do is they replenish the cells in that part of the body. And when we're young and growing, they're very active because we need to produce more cells. Because we're physically growing, we need more cells. But then, as we stop growing, we don't need that to happen. So they become quiescent, they go to sleep. And they're there just in case there's damage.
Right.
However, what happens as we get older, there's inflammation and the communication that stimulates them diminishes. So they're sleeping.
So they don't see old age as a damage?
No, they don't age, unlike other cells.
They shouldn't they? I mean, because old age is damage, isn't it?
Old age is damage, but because they're sleeping, they're not being awakened.
Right. They're not being called to action, basically.
And because those proteins or peptides or communicating proteins in our biosystem has changed. It's diminished. Those cytokines and secretomes that stimulate stem cell activation are diminishing as we get older. Then those stem cells stay asleep. So we've got to activate them either by severe trauma and damage, not chronic slow damage, but severe damage, or by changing the bioenvironment.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. Let's take a quick call from Grace, who's in Ealing. Grace, Dr. Khan's here. Good evening. Good morning.
Good evening. Hi.
Hi.
Well, he mentioned God a second ago, and it reminded me yesterday, Petrie, you said you didn't think that there could be a God given that Dolly Parton had died.
Yeah.
And I kind of came to conclude that God exists while I was studying biology, because it looked to me like there was a designer. But I also think that we can't predict his plans, and even if you don't believe in him, we know that our lifespans are unpredictable. So I kind of feel like it's a shame that people like Brian Johnson have put quite so much of their energy and resource into trying to extend life, because we just don't know at the end of the day. And it is absolutely fantastic to aim to be healthy, but it would be a shame to miss out on any enjoyment in life because one puts all of one's...
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. To miss out on life while you're trying to live longer is absolutely pointless.
Yeah.
But you had a question you wanted to ask, Dr. Khan.
Well, I was going to ask about exercise, but now I'm actually wondering more about... I am curious to know about exercise and how it affects longevity, but I also think, hearing you talk about social interaction, do you think that there's scope for changes in our ways of living so that we mitigate slightly against the risk of Alzheimer's? Because I have felt for ages that we ought to actually move away from the individual living model that we have, whereby there are so many people who are isolated. If we had more intergenerational living, if we had, people who are living on their own paired up so they live with other people, for instance, it might reduce the suffering of people who develop, Alzheimer's and things like that, because I can't begin to imagine how horrific it would be to be suffering with that condition. And yet we're kind of making it more likely by having so many people living alone in our culture.
Oh, we know loneliness is very dangerous for your health. We know that's been around for a while, but it's a great sort of point.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think there are a number of factors. There are now 14 identifiable lifestyle factors which we have control over that will slow down the development of dementia. And at the root of it is isolation, because when we're talking about hearing loss, vision loss, loss of mobility, all of those things contribute towards the development of Alzheimer's and neurodegeneration. And what they're culminating in is that isolation at the end of the day, and depression, and that creates more isolation. So there are all these factors that we are aware of, and then on top of that are other factors which are environmental, like pollution, smoking, alcohol, excessive alcohol, too much sugar. All of these things will have an impact on our biosystems. So there are physical, there are psychological, there are community issues that we can address that can reduce that isolation.
And that reduces the medical side of life.
That reduces the demand on the medical services.
Yeah, amazing.
And, and I think what we've got to stop doing is isolating medical services from the rest of living, because medical services are there to step in when something goes wrong. But it's our responsibility as individuals and as communities to prevent that from going wrong.
Yeah, so it's the whole holistic, as the term there. And Grace, you wanted to know about exercise as well. What impact does exercise have on longevity?
A huge impact. I mean, we're talking about exercise, a good diet, community, as something that's a revelation in today's community. But, when we read Hippocrates' writings, he talks about it then. There's nothing new about these things. Good diet, good community, good exercise.
It all sounds pretty basic, doesn't it?
It's all basic,
yeah.
and Hippocrates was talking about it then, and he was basing a whole medical ecosystem around it then, and and now we're just beginning to realize, we forget, don't we? We get too busy with life.
Yeah, we do forget the basics. Right, we've got to take a very quick break, but Dr. Card and I'll be back in just a moment, and we've got loads of questions coming in as well. So we'll be back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning to you. This is Talk Back, and with me in the studio is Dr. Amir Khan, who's a cosmetic doctor and co-founder of the Harley Street Longevity Clinic in London. And we are talking longevity and really not in a way of pushing our ageing to 125 or whatever, although if it did that, but as long as you're healthy, right? I can't think of anything worse than living, because we seem to live a long time as old people. And not so long at being young people. That you know, if you see somebody who's 102 years old, you think, well, that's 40 years of being an older person, right? I don't want that.
Yeah.
Particularly, I want those 40 years of being a younger person.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because in our clinic we don't just talk about people living better and longer. What we do is we put our patients at the centre of our care programme, and we sit and listen to what their priorities are. You know, a lot of us are going to live to 80. So how do we want that 80-year-old to look like? And I've got a patient who said that, I want to be skiing when I'm 80. And that was a real challenge, because we're working with that. But everybody has a different priority, and those priorities will change as we age.
Yeah.
And don't forget that our experience of having a large population at 80 is very limited. It's new. We're learning a lot as well.
Yeah, that is true. Because, this ageing population issue that we've got, I mean, this is really timely, isn't it, to be talking about healthy living in older life, because we are living longer, and at the moment that hasn't kept up with us being healthy with that.
Or relevant.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about being healthy, it's about being relevant. And there is a real issue at the moment with, we talk about prejudice, and there's a real divide between the young people and the older people. You know, younger people are living a different life to what we lived. They're finding it difficult to buy a house and to get established, and there seems to be this resentment developing. And the older people are becoming isolated more. So there is a real movement to address that. I mean, with the World Health Organization, there is an organisation that looks at
countries like Japan, who are in a really serious situation with their ageing population.
Absolutely.
But I mean, that also has an impact on so many other things, doesn't it? We're seeing pension age now rising, and that will rise even further. We'll be looking probably at being able to collect your pension, if there is one, in your 70s, not in your 60s. So the requirement will be not just that we are living more healthily, but that we are able to continue working.
Absolutely.
Because we're going to have to be working into longer, an older life.
Not just have to be working, but we want to be working. You see, if we're young and fit and relevant, why would we want to retire? Because the quality of our life is related to us working, earning an income and doing the things that we want to do.
Yeah, I always say that a job is more than just going out and earning money, that it is about that socialisation, keeping active and...
Absolutely. And contributing.
Yeah.
And contributing to taxes so we can support the people who really need it. And I think there is a huge socio-economic impact on people living longer.
Yeah.
And I think we need to start addressing that, because if we don't, we're going to run into real problems.
Yeah. And as far as retiring goes, you hear a lot of people who've worked very hectic, busy lives, and then they retire and they're sort of dead within, months, or at least, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Because the connection between feeling useful and being part of society and our health, I don't think has been fully made, but it's quite clear, isn't it, that it's vital.
It's a really important aspect of what we call longevity. And it's all about relevance. People talk about, and there are certain taboo topics in England, all right, which aren't there in Europe and other countries. Being active, being sexually active, being relevant in every aspect of our lives is so important. Being loved. There is a longevity doctor who always asks, is there somebody in your life who loves you? Because if there is, then why would you want to leave? Why would you want to neglect yourself? And a lot of it is about, this concept of wanting to stay.
Yeah, again, because you hear of people who don't. I mean, a classic case is a couple that's been together for, let's say, 60 years or something, and one of them dies, and then for no apparent reason, the partner dies quite quickly after that as well. And I remember having my grandmother, Phyllis, who was blind. I had a lot of blindness in my family. And she took me to one side the very last time I saw her and said, you know, because I said, oh, we'll see you in a few weeks, Granny. And she said, no, you won't. I'm going to be with Grandad. And I absolutely know that she willed herself to switch off. I know she did. She missed him so much, and she just said, "No, I'm going to go and be with your Granddad."
Absolutely. My mother did that. She
really?
she said to me that, you know, Dad's going to call me, and I have to be with him. And you know, she died within a year of him passing.
Yeah. And
then Phyllis, Leslie's mother, she said to us, I'm not going yet. I'm going to stick around because I think you need it. You need me. And she stuck around until.
So there is that power of our brains that we, like you said, your colleague's saying as well, that if you want to stick around, we can fight then. We can fight.
I don't think it's a fight. I think it's a choice.
Right.
And I've 40 years in medicine, 20 plus years in general practice and in primary care. I looked after families. One of my older clients, she was 106.
Wow.
And she was totally relevant. She was incredible. She was a spinster in Bourneville. And she was in a nursing home. And she had an incredible life because she had designed and made all the stained glass for Birmingham Cathedral.
Wow.
And so she would have me come and visit her once a month, and all we do is sit down and talk about what was happening in the world, and we just have a chat. She never had anything wrong with her. She was as fit as anything, as bright as a button. And then she called me she said, you've got to be here at a certain time. So I made sure I was there. And she sat and we were talking, and she went, shh, shh, listen. And there was a plane that went over, and she said, do you know what that is? I said, yeah, it's Concorde's last flight. She said, yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. It was so lovely.
Oh, bless her.
And when she was 106, there was a tribute to her at Birmingham Cathedral where they were exhibiting her work. And, you know, I knew this was happening, and I said, would you like me to take you? And she said, no, I'm tired now. Yeah, I've had enough. And I didn't really realise what she was saying. And then I went to see her again. She said, I'm really tired, I'm going to go to bed. And she took to bed, and she quietly just went to sleep. And it was beautiful.
And that was her calling. She chose the time.
Yeah. And there was nothing wrong with her. She just went to sleep. But having said that, she was 106.
Yeah.
She still lied about her age. She kept telling me she was 103.
We will always lie. Right, another question here for you. This is from Anthony. He says, I've been taking olive oil and a little lemon juice every day for weeks. Will there be any benefit in doing this? This is one of the things you see online quite a lot, is drink a little cup of olive oil a day and it'll improve your health.
I think there is some evidence behind olive oil. It's got good sort of fatty acids in. You know, whether it's materially making any difference or not, we don't know, because there isn't enough evidence there. But it's a healthier food. And lemon juice is an antioxidant. You know, vitamin C is always good for you.
Yeah.
But I think more than that, what's even more significant is that he is thinking about doing the right things.
Yeah.
About looking after his health. And I think that is more of a positive move towards longevity and living a healthier life. Because if you're thinking about taking olive oil and lemon juice, you're thinking about other things as well. You're thinking about not smoking.
Right.
Or drinking excessively, or eating foods which are not necessarily good for you.
Right.
So it's not just about taking the olive oil and the lemon juice. It's the whole ecosystem that we create when we start thinking about our health.
Right, OK. So and it certainly wouldn't do any harm, although perhaps you can get can you get those benefits from just the food you eat rather than drinking a...
I think it's a natural food that he's taking rather than supplements. So it's always better to take it naturally.
Okay.
Nature gives us what we need. So eating a healthy, balanced diet is always key.
Okay. This is Andrew from Salisbury, says, talking biohacks, I swear you look younger as you get older. I think thank the doctor for that. My biohack, he says, is vitamin D and lots of drinking water. I do swear by vitamin D. I take a lot of vitamin D.
Yeah, I think vitamin D is important. It's important for our skin. It's important for our immune system and the way that certain systems work in our body. But we can overdose on vitamin D.
Yes.
And we've got to be careful. So I think taking extra vitamin D or taking vitamin D in our diet as a dietary supplement is fine. But taking high doses of vitamin D, we've got to be careful with. So if you feel you're vitamin D deficient, get a blood test. We can find out.
Yeah, yeah. And drinking water. There's a lot of
drinking water is essential because we are 90
nearly enough water.
Yeah, we're 99% water anyway. So all our biological systems function in a hydrous environment, and if we become dehydrated, so 5% dehydration, we don't even feel thirsty, but we are about 20 to 25% less efficient.
Wow.
So what we need to be aware of is drinking regularly and just keeping topped up is really important.
And especially since we've seen the sort of weather that we're dealing with now, and the excess deaths that we're seeing as well from heat.
Yes.
What can we do about that? What is? Because I just think, well, how are people dying of excess heat? I don't understand.
Well, there are different reasons. Excess heat is going to put pressure on and stress on any underlying illness anyway.
Oh, right.
Okay. The risk of dehydration is increasing. The risk of heat stroke is increasing with excess heat. So it's how we... we had a weekend, it was really hot, and I did a barbecue, and the next day I really suffered with a headache and I felt sick. And I must have had a degree of heat exposure.
Yeah.
And I'm reasonably fit, and I felt that. But somebody who's elderly, who's a bit frail, who's got hypertension and other cardiovascular issues, would feel that a lot more.
Yeah.
And it could precipitate an acute event. So I think we need to be aware of our environment and taking the right precautions. Drinking plenty of water is important. But it's not just drinking water, it's having the right foods, because if we just drink lots and lots of water, we can deplete ourselves of electrolytes.
Right.
So we need the right electrolytes. So eating healthily, drinking water.
When you say eating healthily, are we talking a really sort of boring, what doctors normally tell you to eat?
No, no.
What do you mean by eating healthily?
I think healthy eating is about eating what your body tells you to eat, having a good balance right across the board.
Yeah.
Good protein, okay? High protein. As we get older, we need more protein. We need a high protein, nutrient
Is that for our bones?
Diet. Well, proteins are the building blocks. Amino acids are the building blocks for every cell in our body, okay? And then the nutrients are really in the fats that we eat, the vegetables that we eat. So we've got macronutrients, which are the building blocks, and the energy providers, so the sort of glucose and the carbohydrates. And then the micronutrients are those things that are involved in the functioning of our body at a cellular level, with the hormones, the communicating peptides and all of that. And
do you think that actually the food industry, when we look at the way we're sold food, which is barely food, right? I mean, in some cases, if I go into a shop, I cook everything I eat usually, so I know what I'm putting into my food. But if I go to a shop and I look at stuff, and I'm thinking, what is that? Why is that so complicated? Why are there so many ingredients in this one thing?
Yeah.
Is the food industry to blame for a lot of illnesses and problems, do you think?
I think if you look at it, so the reason why we're living longer is because we've got food which is sanitized.
Right.
Okay? So the risk of infection in that food is much less.
Unless you're in America. at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the risk of infection is less, but to keep that infection risk down, to preserve food, we're adding lots and lots of things which are preservatives.
Right.
But then it goes beyond that. For food to have a longer shelf life, we're adding more preservatives, which aren't necessarily good, because you know what we're doing is we're taking them on board and they're affecting our ecosystem.
But they also like us to be, I use the word addicted ill-advisedly, but they want us to keep going back to certain types of food. So there's sometimes the high sugar and high salt, the reward that kicks that reward sensor in our brain.
Yeah.
And so we eat something, we feel terrific because this sudden spike of insulin probably, and then we go back and buy it again. So they do like to create, if not an addiction, a habit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's marketing, isn't it? It's all about selling your food. But I think companies are becoming more and more responsible now. There are apps you can get, you can scan things to tell you what's in them.
Yeah.
So I think, again, it's down to us to make that choice.
Yeah. But if we but I mean, given the choice, we will choose what makes us, gives us instant gratification.
Not necessarily.
Maybe it's just me.
Not necessarily anymore. I think people are getting switched on to taking control of their own lives.
Yeah.
And I think this whole thing about, there's a lot of negativity and snake oil and sort of non-evidence-based advice around longevity. But what it's doing is it's making people switched on to making the right choices and being responsible for their choices rather than abjugating.